Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 345, Huangquan Organization. Xifeng, Temple Street Square. Every night, there are all kinds of stalls here. There are many kinds of stalls, including clothing, handicrafts, tea sets, jade, cheap electronic products, fortune telling, snacks, and even puppet shows. At the end of the street is a square, where there is a temple of the god of wealth, which is usually very popular. Therefore, the temple priest who specializes in interpreting divinations is fat and white, and is more precious than the residents in the center of Guangling. In the past, the temple street area was crowded with people, but today, it was cleared. From the entrance of Temple Street to the square, it was full of people from the Jiuying group. Luo Yang brought Wenzhao, and was led by Jiuying to this place. The three of them crossed the Temple Street, and went to the square under the gaze of the big men. Jiuying coughed and sneered, "What a big show, but it's all garbage. What's the use of more garbage?" Under the wooden Nuo mask, Luo Yan looked straight ahead, as if he didn't see the big men standing on both sides of the street and the faint bulge under their clothes. In a blink of an eye, they arrived at the square. Outside the temple of the god of wealth, there were 2 rows of people standing, each with their arms folded across their chests, looking like an eagle and a wolf. Luo Yan's eyes burned slightly, and he activated the innocent burning eyes and looked over. Suddenly, the square, the small temple, and many things turned into simple lines in Luo Yan's eyes. He saw at a glance that there were several groups of biological gray light in a small courtyard behind the temple of the god of wealth. In addition, he also saw an unusual light floating in the temple. The light was extremely dim and pale green, floating in the temple like mist, and slightly overflowing the small temple. In this light mist, a message slowly emerged: toxin. Behind it was a number indicating the intensity of the toxin. This number would change slightly every few seconds, sometimes weakening, but generally continuing to rise. Under the mask, Luo Yan had no expression. But at this moment, he felt something was wrong. A few dragon scales floated up on his face, chest, and even hands and feet. After the blood-red dragon scales emerged, extremely dim imperceptible amber light emanated from the gaps. Luo Yang could see clearly that the amber light seemed to be attracted by something, and floated towards the small temple. After entering the temple, it swept across the green poisonous light like a few dragon whiskers. After being swept by the amber light, the green poisonous light dimmed and disappeared, and then there were faint green fireflies the size of rice grains, which merged into the amber light. The amber light flickered brighter for a moment, and the green fireflies disappeared, and the amber light became slightly brighter. Luo Yan was slightly surprised. In the vision of Wu Wang blazing eyes, he saw the numerical changes of the green poisonous light in the temple. The amber light emitted in the dragon transformation form seemed to be able to refine the toxins, and also absorbed some of the toxin essence. Luo Yan vaguely felt that, if he absorbed enough of these toxin essences, he would be able to use them when he opened the dragon transformation posture in the future. Since the dragon blood essence absorbed the phos gene from the red fruit, Luo Yan felt like he had turned into a humanoid beast when he woke up and used the dragon transformation. Now the amber phos gene can refine toxins and absorb essence. I'm afraid it was also the change brought by the red fruit. The fruit was valued by the overlord beast, so it must be extraordinary. Now that I have absorbed some of it, it has brought about various changes, and I don't know what the final outcome will be. Luo Yan's eyes turned cold. All the confusion was gone. I was infected with the red poison, and it was a secondary infection. I don't know how long I can live. Now I naturally have to use all resources to try to detoxify as soon as possible. Apart from that, there is nothing else to fear and doubt. Even if the dragon blood essence will eventually turn me into a humanoid beast, that is something I will consider after removing the red poison. As for now, it is actually my helper. It is a resource worth using. Once the doubts were gone, Luo Yan's mind was clear, and he strode towards the temple. At this time, the men in front of the small temple gate all stepped forward. One of the middle-aged men raised his hand and said in a deep voice, "Stop." Mr. Yeo said that only the leader of the Red Gate can enter for this negotiation. Wen Zhao was about to say something, but he saw Luo Yan raised his hand. The temple had already set up a poison array. He had the amber light to protect his body, so he was not afraid of the poison, and he could refine the poison and absorb the essence. The longer he stayed, the better it would be for him. Wen Zhaoxing didn't have this ability. If he went in rashly, it would become his weakness. Seeing Luo Yan stop him, Wen Zhao also retreated and stood with Xing. Xing's eyes were complicated. After Lei Qi died, although he joined the Red Gate, he was not necessarily loyal. In the more than 1 month that Luo Yan disappeared, Xing had imagined more than once that the Red Ghost died outside, and he took back the organization. But the Red Ghost came back, and now there is a Jiuying group. Xing is now worried that the Red Ghost will be killed. If that happens, the Red Gate will be annexed, and his situation will be even worse than it is now. For a moment, the man was in a complicated mood. In this state of mind, he watched the figure wearing a wooden mask and a cloak walk into the temple. As soon as he entered the temple and entered the green poisonous light, more dragon scales appeared on Luo Yan's body, and the amber light he released was 3 times brighter. Like the green poisonous light, the light released by the dragon blood essence is also difficult to detect with the naked eye. Only people like Luo Yan who have a strange divine treasure can detect it. The amber light became brighter and swept around Luo Yan, refining all the nearby green poisonous light and absorbing the essence of green fireflies. Luo Yan walked through the temple and saw the fat white temple keeper shivering behind a fortune-telling table. Then he went through a small door and came to the backyard. In the backyard, on the open space, there was an 8-person table with 5 people sitting around it. The one in the middle who was facing Luo Yan was a middle-aged man in his 50s. Luo Yan glanced at him, read the other party's information, and knew that he was Yeo Yang guy. As for the other 4, there were men and women, but they were not young. The youngest was about 40 years old, and the oldest was over 60. These 4 people were the leaders of several organizations that Jiuying group had recently expanded and annexed. Now they gathered together, naturally to put pressure on Luo Yan. Luo Yan looked at the people behind the 8-person table again. They looked like Yeo Yang guy's thugs or bodyguards, but what surprised Luo Yan was that these 7 or 8 people were actually at the level of the primary 3rd level. Among them, the one in the middle, with black eyes and a gloomy face, was probably a man in his early 30s. He actually had the strength of the intermediate 2nd level. Presumably, this person was the one who defeated Xing. Luo Yan read his information. Jiuying, 31 years old, a black rope level member of the Huanquan organization. A black rope level member of the Huanquan organization? Luo Yan casually looked at the other thugs. Jiuying, 29 years old, a member of the Huanquan organization. Seeing this, Luo Yan roughly understood why a small Jiuying moving company was able to swallow up small organizations and become the Jiuying group in just over a month. P.S. I forgot to set the timer last night, and I thought I had updated it. Fortunately, someone reminded me. Chapter 346. Don't waste my time. In the backyard of the small temple, Yeo Yang guy, who was wearing a white suit and a black open-collared shirt, said, "You are the Red Ghost of the Red Gate? Why are you wearing a mask? Are you ashamed to be seen?" At the 8 Immortals table, the leaders of several organizations laughed and gave Yeo Yang guy enough face. Yeo Yang guy was in a good mood. He was just the leader of a small organization before, not to mention that the leaders of several organizations now respect him. If it was before, he would have to be careful to accompany anyone at the 8 Immortals table. But now, if he said anything casually, these leaders would speak up to agree. At this time, seeing Luo Yan looking around, one of the middle-aged men in a flowered shirt and a gold necklace stood up and pointed at Luo Yan. "Boy, where are you looking? Didn't you hear Mr. Yeo talking to you? Looking around, you don't look good. You still say you are the leader of the Red Gate. You didn't find a random boy to pretend to be him? Hurry up and roll over here, serve tea to Mr. Yeo, and admit your mistake. Maybe Mr. Yeo can give you Red Gate a chance to survive." Luo Yan didn't look at him, but his cloak fluttered up, and a cold light burst out from it. Then the air twisted, and an invisible ripple crossed the space of the courtyard, and flashed past the 8 immortals table. The table made a rumble and split left and right. The middle-aged man who stood up to speak stiffened, and then his body split into 2 halves, and warm blood splashed on the 2 people next to him. Choke. The ring dragon was unsheathed and sheathed again, and the cloak fell off. Luo Yan then slowly lowered his head, and looked at Jiuying Guy. Let the person who can take charge come out, don't waste my time. Plop. Chairs fell to the ground one by one, including Jiuying Guy. The few people who were still alive at the 8 immortals table stood up one after another. Their faces changed drastically. No one expected that the Red Devil of the Red Gate would kill one person without saying a word, and no one knew how he did it. He just pulled out the long knife from his cloak and killed a leader of the organization. At this time, the others looked at Jiuying Guy. Jiuying Guy's face was sweating profusely. The situation was beyond his imagination and completely different from what he expected. At that moment, his Adam's apple slid up and down, and then he said with a stiff face, "I." At this time, a pair of hands pressed on his shoulders. Then a gloomy voice said, "Don't be stubborn, waste. Sit down. You all." Jiuying Guy's body trembled slightly, then stretched out his hand and pressed down, letting the remaining 3 leaders of the organization sit back. After he sat down, the gloomy man with black smoke around his eyes appeared behind Jiuying Guy. The man named Xing applauded and said, "It's much more difficult than I thought. No wonder it was so easy to take over such an important organization. Mr. Chigi, let's make a deal. Join us, and I'll let you be the leader of Jiuying Group. And you only need to be responsible to me. How about that?" After a moment, Luo Yan said, "Are you done?" Xing's eyes flashed with a hint of doubt. Luo Yan continued, "Then it's my turn. 2 choices. Answer my questions, and you can leave Guangling alive. Or, die here." Xing was stunned, then laughed. Okay, you are worthy of being the leader of the Red Gate. You have courage. But, do you think I'm a vegetarian? Someone may die tonight, but the person who dies will definitely be you. Don't you feel that you are uncomfortable somewhere?" Luo Yan said calmly, "Do you mean poison?" Xing was stunned. Several leaders of the organizations next to Jiuying Guy changed color. What kind of poison? Who poisoned it? What happened to Mr. Yao? Jiuying Guy was about to say something, but suddenly his expression was painful. He covered his chest with his hands and spat out black blood with a wow. The other leaders of the organization stood up in shock, stepped back one after another, and pointed at Xing. "What's going on?" As soon as he finished speaking, they changed color one after another, and then spat out black blood. Jiuying Guy struggled to grab Xing's hand. "Mr. Cui, I will do what you say. Please let me go. Please give me the antidote." Luo Yan's eyes were deep. He originally thought that Xing would release the toxin and set up the poison array to give Jiuying Guy and others the antidote in advance. Unexpectedly, he wanted to kill Jiuying Guy and others together. Xing's face was as gloomy as water, staring at Luo Yan. "Why don't you attack yet?" Luo Yan did not answer. At this time, the amber light around him was sweeping in all directions, refining all the nearby miserable green poisonous light, and had absorbed a lot of green firefly essence, which could be used at any time. Xing no longer hesitated and growled, "Kill him." Behind him, the active members of the Huanquan organization showed their Yuanli, released fluctuations, and gathered around Luo Yan. "It seems that you chose the latter." Luo Yan did not move until several figures approached. His cloak fluttered, and then the sword lights broke through the air, and screams suddenly broke out in the courtyard. Choke. The Huanlan returned to its sheath. Plop. Figures fell down one after another around Luo Yan. In the distance, Jiuying Guy's scalp exploded. Xing's men were all dead in an instant. Those people were either separated from their heads or directly split in half. The bloody smell filled the backyard of the small temple, and even the strong smell of incense emanating from the small temple could not cover it. Jiuying was shocked. He knew that his men were no match for the Red Ghost, and he did not really expect them to kill the Red Ghost. Xing's idea was to let these men delay for a while, so that he could use his special ability to release a more powerful poison to Luo Yan. Unexpectedly, his men were killed by Luo Yan in the blink of an eye. So cruel. Looking at the evil eyes behind Luo Yan's wooden mask, Xing subconsciously took 2 steps back, then hurriedly said, "Wait. Mr. Chigi, please listen to me. I will tell you whatever you want to know. I promise to know, but not to say, and to tell you everything." Luo Yan looked at him, reading his thoughts, and said, "What is the scale of your Huanquan organization, and what classes are there inside?" Xing's body trembled slightly, then smiled bitterly. "It turns out that Mr. Chigi knew our origins a long time ago. No wonder he is so sure that Yao Yang guy is not the leader." He sighed, then revealed a hint of pride, and said, "Our Huanquan influence is spread all over the southern border, especially the 3 underground cities of Yandu, Yinma, and Shengjing, as well as the nearby surface. That is our world." Luo Yan said, "Oh," behind the wooden mask, "so, you are here to expand your influence?" Xing laughed hoarsely, and then said, "As for our internal classes, they are at the bottom." He pointed at the corpse lying on the ground with his chin. "They are the Deng Huo class, and my class is above them, called Black Rope. Further up, there are Zhang, Jiuying, Dajiuying, Jiao, Dajiao, and the top Wujian." Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Huanquan can be divided into 8 classes, and Black Rope is the second from the bottom. In this way, Xing can't even be called the backbone of the organization. A mid-level realm can only get into the Black Rope class, so it seems that the Huanquan organization is not much inferior to the Black Witch. Chapter 347, Crossing the Line. Seeing the thoughtful light in Chigi's eyes behind the wooden mask, Jiuying was secretly happy. The reason why he was so willing to cooperate was to delay time. While he was answering the question, Jiuying had already quietly released a more violent toxin. However, even if it was to delay time, Jiuying answered truthfully. Chigi just called out the name of the Huanquan organization, which made Jiuying dare not make a fuss about this matter, because he didn't know how much Chigi knew about Huanquan. If he was too smart and was discovered by Chigi, it would be more trouble than gain. Just a little more. Just a little more. Come on, Chigi, ask your grandfather a few more questions. The more you ask, the faster you die. Jiuying sneered in his heart and began to imagine the scene where Chigi died of poison and he took over the Red Gate and thus mastered the underground world of Guangling. Then the red ghost wearing a wooden mask said, "Your Huanquan belongs to the southern border, so you must be unfamiliar with the northern land. But you only took more than a month to turn a small company into a group. This can't be done by just spending money. The most interesting thing is that you just arrived, but you seem to know which underground organizations are in Guangling. So you play to your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. First control Yao Yang guy behind the scenes, and then swallow up other small organizations. During the whole process, you didn't touch my Red Gate at all. It didn't come to us until it was fully grown. It seems that someone led the way for you. Tell me, who is that guide?" Jiuying exclaimed inwardly. He didn't hide it. He said in a deep voice, "It's a man named Liu. He provided a lot of information and reminded me to be careful of the Red Gate and the Red Ghost." Hearing this, Luo Yan felt a sense of as expected. Then he said, "Can you contact Liu? Jiuying was startled, then said, "Sure. Contact him now. What does this guy want to do?" "It doesn't matter. The longer it takes, the better it is for me." Thinking of this, Jiuying took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. At this time, he saw Chigi stretched out his hand. Jiuying understood that the other party wanted the phone. He took the opportunity to tap the phone case with his little finger and pat the colorless poison powder hidden in his fingernails on the phone. Then he threw it to Chigi. Seeing Chigi take it without any defense, Jiuying was overjoyed. Luo Yan took the phone and put it to his ear. After the phone was connected, someone said, "Mr. Cui, how is it? Is Chigi dead?" This was Liu's voice. Luo Yan said nothing. There was silence on the other end of the phone. After a few seconds, Liu took the initiative to hang up. Liu Yang put the phone away, clapped his hands, watched the amberlight gas devour the poison on his palm, and then stretched out his arm to Jiuying Xing. Thank you for your cooperation. Seeing that the red ghost wanted to shake hands with him, Jiuying Xing was not surprised but happy, and stretched out his hand generously. It's my duty, Jiuying Xing said, and then he saw the red ghost's hand suddenly clenched into a fist. Yuanli burst out. A roaring sound rang in his ears. Then a fist continued to expand in his eyes. He clearly saw that a few scales like dragon scales floated on the fist. Those scales were bright red like blood, with a hint of fishy smell that was not easy to detect. Jiuying Xing was shocked, and was about to float away, but the fist suddenly accelerated and imprinted between his eyebrows. Then he saw the red ghost float away a little, turned around, ignored him, and walked towards the small temple. Wait. Jiuying Xing was about to catch up, but suddenly there were cracks all over his vision, and it was suddenly dark, and he could not feel anything. Yao Yang guy on the ground was horrified to see Jiuying Xing's body twisted and deformed from the head, as if he had no bones, and turned into a pool of mud in an instant. Then he remembered that he was poisoned, and hurriedly called for help from Chigi. Wait, save me, save me. Liu Yan turned a deaf ear. When he walked out of the temple of the god of wealth, the big men of Jiuying group were all shocked. They stepped back one after another. They probably guessed what happened in the temple. Liu Yan glanced at them indifferently. The men all shuddered, and then a smart one rushed out and knelt on one knee behind Liu Yan and said, I, Wan Hui, am willing to be loyal to Mr. Chigi, and I will go through fire and water without hesitation. The other men were startled, and they cursed in their hearts, and followed suit, kneeling down and swearing. Then the whole temple street, hundreds of people on both sides of the street, looked at each other. Then the sound of oaths was heard one after another. Liu Yan didn't say anything, just said to Wenzhao, I'll leave it to you next. Don't go into the temple for now, the air inside is poisonous, you can handle it. Wenzhao hurriedly said, I know. After sending Liu Yan away, Wenzhao was secretly shocked. Captain Chigi dared to go in, even though he knew it was poisonous. It's really terrible. Maybe he is more terrible than Yukiashu. What should I do? Should I make it real and follow Captain Chigi in the future? Jude building. Quiet room. Liu Yan walked into this room and took out Jiuying's new mobile phone. Just now, this guy thought he could delay time secretly, but he didn't know that his thoughts were completely seen by Liu Yan. So after Liu Yan got the information he wanted, he decided to kill him. With the intermediate 4th level Yuan Li and the incomplete dragon transformation power, he used a bone-crushing style to kill the intermediate 2nd level realm. Originally, he planned to complete the team mission assigned by Yukiashu first, but now it seems that he has to put the matter of eliminating Liu Zhao on the agenda. Liu Yang called Yukiashu directly. After the phone was connected, Yukiashu said with a slightly nasal tone, Captain Chigi, have you changed your mind and want to be my man? Liu Yan ignored her ridicule and said in a deep voice, Liu Zhao colluded with the Huanquan organization and led them to target me. How should this matter be handled? The phone was silent for a moment, and then Yukiashu said seriously, be more specific. After Liu Yan briefly described it, Yukiashu said, do you have any evidence? Jiuying's mobile phone is still with me. There are call records with Liu Zhao in it. Does it count? Liu Yan glanced at the mobile phone on the table. Yukiashu said immediately, of course forget it. What Liu Zhao did is overstepping the line. You can fight as much as you want within the organization, but using outsiders to target their own people is something the organization will never allow. Besides, the Huanquan organization is huge and is the best in the southern border. They are competitors of our Black Witch. Liu Zhao is digging his own grave. There are 2 ways to handle this matter. One is that I report it, and you don't have to do anything. The organization will send a law enforcement team to take action. The second is that I provide Liu Zhao's location, and you act and handle it yourself. Liu Yan pondered for a few seconds, then asked, what's the difference between the 2 methods? Chapter 348 Dragon Elephant. Yukiashu chuckled and said, the difference lies in the benefits. The first method, the law enforcement team will take action, and you have nothing to do with it. but after Liu Zhao is dealt with, all his assets will be taken over by the organization and become part of the internal resources. As for the second method, it's just the opposite. The organization recognizes the legitimacy of your actions, but will not provide assistance. After you solve the problem yourself, all of Liu Zhao's assets will belong to you, and you can control them. Luo Yan was quick-witted and immediately asked, if I deal with it myself, can I invite helpers? Of course, this is also included in the scope of self-disposal. Yukioshu immediately gave a positive reply. Luo Yan was not polite and said, then I would like to ask you for help. When I take action, be responsible for blocking and prevent Liu Zhao from escaping. Also, do you have a mecha for Ent? Yukioshu said in surprise, can you drive a mecha? This really surprised her. Luo Yan said calmly, I have learned it. Yukioshu smiled and said, Chigi, how many surprises do you have for me? Really not considering being my man? After a few jokes, Yukioshu said solemnly, I have a mecha, and I can rent it to you. However, as far as I know, Liu Zhao and his men have a total of 4 mechs. How many mechs do you plan to rent? I remember that in Zhang's team, only Zhang himself could drive, and the others were not mecha masters. If it was just you couldn't deal with 4 mechs, right? Luo Yang nodded gently. As Yukioshu said, the lack of mechas and mecha masters was the shortcoming of Team 7. And it was quite fatal. This would make Team 7 very passive in many actions, and they would not be able to accept some tasks that required the use of mechas. He knew that Yukioshu must have something to say, so he waited quietly. Yukioshu continued, how about this? I'll rent you 1, and let 2 more mechas assist you. What do you think? Tell me your price, and see if I can afford it. Luo Yan believed that there is no free lunch in the world, and Yukioshu is not the kind of helpful old man. Yukioshu smiled and said, Brother Chigi, do you think my sister is such a money-loving person? Without waiting for Luo Yan to answer, she said, after dealing with Liu Zhao, I want 30% of his current assets, or a mecha, of course. It must be a high-end body. How about it? Can you afford this price? Luo Yan was a little surprised. Of course he could afford this price, and he didn't even have to pay it immediately. Everything will be discussed after Liu Zhao is dealt with. Renting a mecha, plus getting other help. Only 30% of the assets, or a high-end mecha. This price can only be said to be cheap. Deal. Luo Yan said, but why do you want to do this? Yukioshu snorted, investment. If you want to make big money, you have to have a long-term vision, and don't let the small profits in front of you confuse your eyes. I think that investing in you will make 10, 100 or even 1,000 times the current price in the future. In a word, I'm counting on you. That's it for now. I'll notify you when I find out where Liu Zhao is. You should prepare well. End the call. Luo Yan put down his phone, closed his eyes and thought for a moment, then asked someone to find Guan Peng from the Iron Horse mercenary group. Not long after, Guan Peng arrived. Let your people prepare. There will be an action soon. By the way, are there any mecha divisions among your people? Luo Yan remembered that Di Zheng once said that the people of the Iron Horse were all retired from the Corps. Although not all the retired Corps members were mecha divisions, there should be some. Guan Peng laughed and said, yes, there were several in our group before, but now, there is only me. Luo Yan nodded. He had a plan to train his own mecha division. But now, he did not continue to discuss this issue in depth. He talked with Guan Peng for a while, and after confirming some details, he asked Guan Peng to go back first. At this time, when Zhao came back, Master, we have temporarily taken over the people and things of the Jiuying group. In terms of people, the Jiuying group has absorbed a lot of organizations recently. There are about 200 or 300 people who can be mobilized. They are all guys who can fight and kill. In terms of things, the newly purchased industries of the Jiuying group, including a commercial building in the city, have begun to go through the procedures. In about a week, it will officially become our Redgate industry. Luo Yan said I'll leave the matter of Jiuying's assets to you. Then he called Jiuying over. Integrate the people of Jiuying group with our personnel, and then select 100 smart and capable ones from them, and hand them over to Wei Junai. Let Yang Hao train them well. Also notify Wei Junai, and ask him to be ready. We will need him in a few days. Jiuying nodded. Understood. Wen Zhao then said, Master, those people surnamed Yao died in the end. Their bodies are outside the temple of the god of wealth. What do you think we should do with them? Luo Yan stood up and said casually, let their subordinates or family members come and claim them. After giving instructions, Luo Yan left the restaurant. Not long after, Jiuying and Wen Zhao came to the temple of the god of wealth. Looking at the bodies placed in front of the small temple, Jiuying's face was solemn. Because in it, he saw Xing, the person who defeated and injured him, whose body was no longer in human form. If Jiuying had any ulterior motives towards Luo Yan before, now he was left with only deep fear. The next day, Basin Academy, Luo Yan was holding a tablet and flipping through the redeemable items of the divine weapon. The name is divine weapon, but this category of items does not only refer to weapons, there are many kinds of items. In addition to weapons, there are armor, accessories, and some things that are difficult to classify. For example, one of the mirrors is wrapped with bones, which can continuously reflect the target and make the opponent's flesh rot and bones appear. There is also a black leather drum, which can release thunder and fire of different scales by beating different rhythms. Luo Yan looked at the divine weapon items on the exchange page over and over again, and chose a sword. The sword is called Dragon Elephant, with an ancient shape. It is made of the strange iron ingixu, feels heavy and is extremely sharp. In addition, when using this sword, the Yuan force can stimulate the repressive power of this sword. The repressive power can hinder the opponent's actions and suppress the Yuan force, as if being suppressed by 10 dragons and 10 elephants. After finalizing, Luo Yan reported the project and received a notification a moment later. A week later, you can go to the core logistics department to pick it up. In the blink of an eye, it was afternoon. Luo Yan finished practicing and found a call message on his mobile phone. Yukiishu's number was displayed on it. He called back immediately. There's a result. As soon as the call was connected, Yukiishu said, Liu Zhao is quite smart. After you called him with the cell phone of a member of the Huanquan organization yesterday, this guy left the original underground city in the morning. He hid in the Yinwen base, which is a surface base near the bay. Chapter 349, All Parties. Leaving the underground city, because the underground city environment is easy to be attacked. Hiding in the base, because the surface base can be advanced or retreated, and the mechs of Team 3 cannot be parked in the underground city. Therefore, the Yinwen base should be their major parking point. With mechs in hand, they can fight or flee, which is 100 times more convenient than the underground city. Yinwen base. Luo Yan wrote it down and said, has Liu Zhao's crossing the border been announced to the organization? Yukiishu smiled and said, of course not. If it was announced, he would not just escape into a surface base, but leave the Northland. Luo Yan nodded. Can you please send me a message through the organization's channels? Also, do you know any news about the killer organization's Duanhu? Also, I want to buy some things. I wonder if you can get them? Qingyang City, Red Building. Several girls serving tea looked at the corner in the distance with disgust, where a man with yellow teeth smoked and drank, looking sloppy and unpleasant. That man is so scary. I was close to him just now, and was almost suffocated by his breath. That's right, he stinks. I think we should set rules in the Red Mansion, otherwise all kinds of people will run in. These words floated into the man's ears. He smiled and shook his head. Captain He, why are you shaking your head? A hearty voice came. Then there was another person at the table. About 37 or 38, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Although not handsome or cool, he was very masculine. Captain Zheng, have you also received an invitation from Captain Yu? The former is the captain of the 5th team of the Zuanming department, Hedong, and the latter is Zheng Huan of the 2nd team. Of course not. Zheng Huan sat down, waved his hand, called a little girl, and showed his white teeth. Please give me a bowl of barbecued pork, and a bottle of white liquor. The girl nodded and left. Hedong said, Captain Zheng is more popular than me. These girls despise me, because I'm ugly, and have a foul mouth. Oh, it's really hard. Zheng Huan laughed. How can the girls know the good of Captain He? He looked at the boxing ring not far away, where people were fighting. A man and a woman. The man was wearing iron knuckles, and the woman was using double blades. Both sides attacked and defended each other, but generally speaking, the man attacked less and defended more. After a while, he was cut on the arm and thigh by the woman, which made him even more passive. Have you heard about it? He Dong poured a glass of soju for Zheng Huan. The Red Devil of Team 7 has issued an ultimatum to Liu Zhao, ordering him to return Zhang's mecha within this week. Otherwise he will go to his house to ask for it. Of course I heard about it, Zheng Heng said. At this time, a girl brought barbecued pork and wine. Zheng Heng pointed at the man on the stage. Buy me that brother to win 1000 work points. After swiping the card and sending the girl away, Zheng Heng continued, and the captain of the Red Devil also stated that this is a matter between Team 7 and Team 3 and hopes that other teams will not interfere. This is not a statement, it's a warning. He Dong picked up a piece of barbecued pork from Zheng Heng's bowl and said while chewing, "You said, Captain, you asked us to come here, didn't he want to discuss this matter?" Zheng Heng shook his head. "I don't think so." At this time, Zheng Heng's mobile phone on the table rang. He glanced at it and frowned. It's Liu Zhao. After speaking, he answered the phone. After the call, He Dong picked up all the barbecued pork in Zheng Heng's bowl. "What's the matter?" He Dong looked up. Zheng Heng put down his phone. "What else could it be? You wanted me to help you deal with Team 7, but I declined. I won't get involved in such troublesome matters." "Smart." He Dong gave a thumbs up. At this time, two women in white suits and high ponytails came over. They said respectfully, Captain Zheng, my lady invites you." He Dong and Zheng Heng exchanged glances, and the latter took the bottle of white liquor that he had not yet finished and smiled. "Lead the way." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. In a room, there was a copybook hanging on the wall, with only one word on it, endure. Liu Zhao took a look at the copybook, and put down his phone. "Captain, what's wrong? Is that Zheng ungrateful?" In the room, a man with scars on his face and a fierce look was eating raw beef, chewing until his mouth was full of blood. Especially when he spoke, the blood splashed on the ground. Liu Zhao frowned and glanced at him. "How many times have I told you, Yubei, don't eat in my office?" The man named Yubei smiled, finished his meal in 3 or 2 bites, and wiped his mouth. "I promise there won't be a next time." Liu Zhao shook his head. Although he didn't like the man's style, he was his confidant, and was very loyal to him, so he could tolerate some of his minor flaws. Zheng Heng said he is on a mission now. Bullshit, he doesn't have any missions recently. Before, he and He Dong patted their chests, and said that they would target the Red Ghost, but the Red Ghost is still alive and well now. The people of the Huanquan organization are really useless. I led them to their doorstep, but they were still dealt with by the Red Ghost. Even so, they dared to call themselves the number 1 in the southern border. After cursing and venting his anger, Liu Zhao calmed down again. He picked up his mobile phone and sent a message. This message was sent to the killer organization Xuanhu, inviting them to the Yinwen base. Soon Xuanhu replied and accepted Liu Zhao's invitation. Liu Zhao's mouth had a little smile. At this time, the phone rang again, but it was an unfamiliar number. Liu Zhao answered the call, and after a moment his smile widened. After putting down the phone, he looked at his confidant and said, "The new captain of Team 4, Chenling, just called me and said that their team is willing to help us." Yubei grinned and said, "Team 4's captain Xiao Teng and his confidant are all dead. Now Team 4 is seriously injured. If they don't know how to find a backer, they would be really stupid." Liu Zhao pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose. "Now we have Team 4 to help, plus the people from Xuanhu. It's okay if Team 7 doesn't come, but if they dare to come, I will make them pay." Yubei clenched his fists, making a crackling sound, and smiled grimly. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. In an abandoned brewery, in the director's office, next to a wall with a national map, a man with broad knuckles put down his phone. "There's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. Don't worry, take one step at a time. No matter how long the road is, you can always reach the end." He raised his head and looked outside the window with paint peeling off the window frame. "But we Xuanhu can no longer go on working at the regular pace. Urgent illness requires strong medicine. I hope Liu Zhao will be our strong medicine." He looked at a woman leaning against the door in the office with headphones on. "Li Du." Although she was wearing headphones, she still heard the voice. The woman raised her head. "What's the matter, boss?" The Xuanhu leader said in a low voice. "Go and notify Longwei and the others that we will set off for Yinwen base early tomorrow morning." "Okay." Li Du nodded, then shook his head and walked out humming a song. After watching the woman leave, the leader of Xuanhu looked at the map on the wall and said, "I founded Xuanhu 10 years ago. Although we have experienced many ups and downs along the way, we have never suffered a big loss. But I lost my deputy and 5 good fighters at the hands of an unknown guy. What a shame. What a shame." Chapter 350. Show off to Mr. Chiggy. When the sun set into the western forest, it started to rain. The rain was weak at first, but it became heavy. It was pouring. It was almost December, and the weather was cold, and the rain was even colder. The cold night and heavy rain made this almost deserted town dark. The survivors huddled in this city chose to go to bed early in such weather to avoid wasting energy. Another thing is not to turn on the lights at night, or turn on the lights less. It is almost a consensus among the survivors on the surface that too bright light will attract the attention of the giant beast. So on this night, dark shadows scattered into the city, but no one noticed. These figures had clear goals. Although they entered the city from different directions, they were like undercurrents in the sea, and finally converged to the same place. It was an abandoned brewery. Now there was no beer in the factory, only rats and weeds. In a dilapidated building a few hundred meters away from the brewery, Guanpeng took off his raincoat and stared at the dark factory in the distance. Behind him, a clever young man emerged from the shadows, also took off his raincoat and threw it on the ground. "Uncle Peng, everyone is here." The young man shook off the rain on his body. Behind him, 2 other people lifted a box and put it on the ground. When they opened it, they found some equipment inside. The main equipment was a portable shoulder-mounted rocket launcher with a shell placed next to it and a pair of goggles with a very smooth shape. Guanpeng looked at the box and exclaimed, "The Wasp rocket launcher can use the matching tactical scope to lock the target, guide and correct the trajectory. This thing costs 300,000 work points per set. Now we have 4 sets. If it weren't for Mr. Chiggy, we wouldn't have used such a good thing. Don't you think so, Xianzi?" Xianzi's full name is Wang Xian. He is one of the soldiers of the Iron Horse mercenary group and has been in the mercenary group for almost 2 years. He still remembers that when the mercenary group was in the most difficult time, their weapons were only old-fashioned semi-automatic rifles. How could they get advanced weapons worth hundreds of thousands of work points? Thinking of this, Wang Xian nodded excitedly. Equipment. Guanpeng pressed the radio on his chest again. "Get everything ready. According to the plan, blow up that factory for me. This is our first mission. You need to raise soldiers for 1,000 days, to use them in 1 day. Don't lose face for our iron horses. Show off to Mr. Chiggy." There were chuckles and responses from the radio. In the back, Wang Xian had already put on tactical glasses, carried the Wasp rocket launcher, walked to the window, and locked a position. Guanpeng's eyes became cold, and the cold rain powder slapped the middle-aged man's face. He said in a deep voice, "Begin the countdown. 3, 2, 1 attack." Wang Xian pulled the trigger. Whoosh! A faint flame spurted out from the tail of the shell, and it suddenly broke away from the launcher, breaking through the rain curtain, leaving a faint light-colored tail in the dark night. Almost in the blink of an eye, it fell into the factory and hit the target. Boom! The main building of the factory exploded violently, and the rooftop of the building was directly blown away. The flames gushing out of the building rushed out of the gap in the rooftop and turned into dazzling fireballs that could burn steel. At the same time, 3 other fireballs lit up and rose in different locations of the factory. 4 fireballs rose at the same time, directly raising the brewery to the ground. Even the underground facilities of the factory suffered a violent blow. The simple underground fortifications could not completely withstand the explosion. The explosion and flames of the beer factory alarmed the surface survivors in the small town. Thin faces appeared behind the windows of various buildings, and the bright firelight that illuminated the night reflected their faces red. The survivors had complicated eyes, surprise, worry, and fear. Various emotions appeared in their eyes. They did not stay for too long. In just a few seconds, they quickly returned to the house, packed up their belongings, and then went into various basements. Their movements were so skillful that it made people feel distressed. In a shopping mall building 2 streets away from the brewery, Luo Yan, wearing a cloak and a wooden mask, reflected the fireball rising from the direction of the factory in his red eyes. That day, he got the information about Zuanhu from Yukioshu, and he came here secretly with the Iron Horse mercenary group and the old members of Team 7, including Wen Junai. Now seeing that the Iron Horse has begun to act, Luo Yan stretched out his hand from his cloak and gestured. The one-armed Wen Junai led several old members of Team 7 and left silently. After the first wave of explosions, there was a series of explosions in the brewery, but it was the ammunition depot of the Zuanwu organization located in the brewery that was implicated by the explosion. The explosion lasted for nearly 1 minute before it stopped. After the explosion, the factory was filled with smoke, and the building became a ruin with piles of rubble. In the firelight, a pile of stones suddenly exploded, and then someone came out coughing. Fang Chang. The man had blood on his forehead, his clothes were torn, and he was seriously injured. He looked around, his face filled with sorrow. In the underground passage behind him, smoke billowed, and 2 more people came out. 1 man and 1 woman. Both were in a very bad state. The woman was Li Du, and the man was Long Wei. The 2 looked at the ruined factory, their faces full of despair. Could it be that the others? Li Du was distraught, and couldn't believe it. Long Wei roared around. Who is it? Get out, I'm going to kill you. Suddenly, Fang Chang threw him down, and almost at the same time, a fist-sized gap was blown out of a broken wall behind Long Wei. Bang! Only then did gunshots come from a distance. There's a sniper. Fang Chang shouted, get cover. He shouted while pulling Long Wei to move continuously. Gunshots came from all directions, and a stream of metal composed of bullets kept chasing Fang Chang and the other 2. Finally, they hid behind a pile of rocks. Fang Chang yelled, who are you, my friends? I wonder how I, Zuanhu, have offended you? When he started to speak, Li Du and Long Wei pricked up their ears, waiting for the other party to respond, then followed the sound and rushed over. The next second, there was a whistling sound in the sky, and then a grenade fell near the hiding place of the 3 people of Zuanwu, suddenly exploded, and a roar was heard. The 3 people dodged in a panic, but were separated by the explosion, and then walked further and further away under the shooting of sniper rifles and rifles. Seeing that there was no hope of reunion, they could only rush forward separately. Li Du stopped immediately when he climbed over the wreckage of a car. In front of her, she saw a burly middle-aged man standing on it with a big horse and a golden sword, and said in a deep voice, this road is blocked. On the other side of the factory, Long Wei had just jumped onto a pile of stones when suddenly a flash of knife light rushed towards him and chopped him down again. He slid to the ground and looked up again and saw a one-armed man holding a long knife and loosening the scabbard in his mouth. Fang Chang broke through 2 blockades and was about to break out when his eyes suddenly became cold and he fell to the ground. Above his head, the air was distorted and invisible ripples passed by. Chapter 351, Killing on a Rainy Night. When the invisible ripples passed, Fang Chang looked up and saw a small mecha standing on the ruins of the factory in front of him. It was red with black and gold decorations. Its face armor was ferocious, like a demon. It held a long knife in its hand. It looked down at him. Fang Chang's heart trembled, thinking that if this mecha could also increase the combat power of the driver, it would be too terrible. He cleared his throat and shouted, who are you, sir? I don't remember that Azuan who has ever offended a person like you. Why do you want to do such a cruel thing to us? He asked while thinking hard about countermeasures. Unexpectedly, the mecha had no intention of answering. There were several light bangs behind the mecha, and then light rose into the air. Fang Chang subconsciously raised his head and suddenly saw a point of light suddenly exploded, emitting a strong light, which immediately made him unable to open his eyes. Flash bomb. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he heard another muffled sound at his feet, and then the pungent smoke choked his nose, and he couldn't help coughing and crying. Fang Chang cursed inwardly, despicable. This is clearly a tear gas bomb. He retreated while swinging the long sword in his hand to prevent the enemy from chasing him, but he retreated only a little distance and suddenly heard the sword sink, as if it hit something, and then there was an explosion. He hurriedly showed his Yuanli, condensed a phantom, and resisted the impact. Boom. There was a loud sound in his eyes, followed by a shock, and then a burning sensation came, making Fang Chang's whole body hot and screaming. After the flash bomb and tear gas bomb, this is obviously an incendiary bomb. He hurriedly mobilized his Yuan Li and exploded his outer clothes at the same time to avoid being entangled in flames and finally burned to death. He really didn't expect that the opponent was so cunning and cautious and didn't give him a chance to fight fairly. Using 3 different types of bombs in a row put himself in a disadvantage. On the other side, Long Wenyi and the one-armed man were fighting fiercely. Long Wenyi, who came from the Black Tiger organization, did not look like a killer at all at this time, but rather like a brave warrior. His skin was like hard rock, with sharp edges and corners, and a sense of solidity and condensation. This was his Shenzang ability, the rock body of the super system. With this Shenzang, plus the protection of Yuan Li, Long Wenyi's defense was amazing. This made him not dodge or evade when fighting against others, and knock down the opponent from the front. But today, he met his match. The one-armed man was agile, responsive, and his Yuan Li was not inferior to him. With the long knife in his hand, every time he chopped, he would leave a light green mark on Long Wenyi's rock skin. Then this mark would become deeper and deeper, and finally the stone skin, where the mark was located, would emit green smoke and be corroded by it. After fighting for a while, Long Wenyi had many similar marks on his body, and his whole body was emitting green smoke. The Shenzang that he relied on to roam the battlefield was not working today and was restrained. This made Long Wenyi gradually lose his composure and become anxious. Finally, a flaw appeared, allowing the one-armed man to slash across his eyes with a knife, cutting off his eyeballs. Long Wenyi screamed, covered his face and stepped back. After taking a few steps back, his head suddenly swung back, and there were cracks all over his forehead. A flat-end bullet fell at his feet. Sniper. He was hit by a sniper, but his Shenzang ability saved him once. Although Long Wenyi did not die, he was dizzy and his head hurt, as if it was about to explode. He waved his hands around randomly, but at this moment, his head shook again, and this time the whole person flew up. He was hit by a second sniper. This time, Long Wenyi's Shenzhen could no longer function, and his forehead sank, spurting out a puff of blood mist. The man flew backwards a little, then fell straight to the ground, and died on the spot. This scene was seen by a pair of eyes. Zuanhu, Li Du. When the woman saw the burly man with a big horse and a golden sword blocking her way, she fainted a shot, and turned around to run away, without any intention of fighting to the death. She was very fast and flexible, especially familiar with the environment of the brewery. Even if the factory was bombed into ruins, she could cleverly use the environment to get rid of the pursuers behind her. At this time, she saw Long Wenyi dead, and her heart was sad, but her movements did not pause. But just as she passed the brewery warehouse area, something suddenly shot at the ground with two swooshes from the shadows of the nearby ruins. Li Du instinctively jumped into the air to avoid the things under her feet, but at this time, several more sounds of breaking through the air sounded and shot towards her back. Li Du was so scared that her soul flew away. At this moment, she was in the air, with no place to borrow strength, and no way to change her direction. She could only judge the direction based on the sound, and barely turned her waist and twisted her body to fall to the side with fewer breaking sounds. At the same time, she encouraged her Yuan Li to prepare to resist the attack. But when her back shook violently, a piercing pain made her scream miserably. When she fell to the ground, she saw an alloy arrowhead emerging from her left shoulder. Then the arrowhead had barbs extending from all around it, and suddenly slid back, with the arrowhead and the barbs buried deep into Li Du's flesh. Li Du screamed in pain again, and when he looked back, he found that the arrowhead was still connected to a long rope, which extended into the shadows in the distance. Then, in the rain, inside the shadows, a gloomy-faced man walked out, holding a weapon similar to a crossbow in his hand. Then he used the pulley to retract, pulled the long rope straight, and dragged Li Du backwards. Li Du was about to cut the long rope, and the sound of breaking air continued to ring in his ears. One after another, black shadows tore through the rain line and shot Li Du one after another, allowing arrows to break through Li Du's body, and then extended barbs, and buckled into Li Du's flesh. Li Du screamed, and her whole body was buckled by 5 or 6 such arrows. Then those people wandered around her, turning around and around, and tied her up like a dumpling. Finally, they slapped the crossbow like weapons, and the weapons made a buzzing sound. Then the long ropes were electrified, and the high voltage current shocked Li Du so much that his whole body twitched, and his clothes snapped. He was also electrocuted to death, and his skin was blackened by the electricity. Li Du. Long way. The brewery was near the factory gate. Fang Chang knelt on one knee on the ground, supporting his body with the sword, breathing heavily. He was defeated. His previous worries became a reality. The small mecha could indeed increase the combat power, although the increase was not as exaggerated as that of the conventional mecha, which could be used to kill the giant beast. But the pilot, Fang Chang was sure, must be at least at the intermediate level. He was lucky enough to survive the first wave of explosions, but he was also injured. In addition, he was only at the intermediate level. How could he fight against the same level using the mecha? Moreover, Fang Chang was at a disadvantage as soon as the opponent attacked, and it was already quite rare for him to survive until now. Fang Chang spat out blood, raised his head, and looked at the mecha coming out of the rain with bloodshot eyes. He looked at the Red Devil and smiled bitterly. Can you show yourself and let me die with a clear conscience? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 352, Silver Bay Base. As the leader of the assassin organization, Fang Chang was at a disadvantage, but he was not discouraged. Even in a desperate situation, he had to find a glimmer of hope. Just like now, although he said that he was short of breath, he actually wanted the driver in the mecha to show up. As long as the opponent came out of the mecha, he would launch a sudden attack. No matter how bad it was, he would fight to the death. At this moment, perhaps he felt that he had a good chance of winning, and hot smoke came out from the back of the mecha. The mecha opened, and the driver in the mecha was about to come out. Fang Chang couldn't help but concentrate all his energy on the head of the mecha. At this moment, the mecha's hand suddenly raised, and the long knife in his hand pulled the cold light, whistling and sweeping. By the time Fang Chang noticed it, he was already a bit late. He only had time to shrink his body back, but then, the world in his eyes began to spin. Fang Chang saw the night sky illuminated by flames, and saw the rain falling all over the sky. Then he saw a headless body leaping back a few steps, standing on the ground, staggering, and then falling. He was at a loss at first, and then a thought flashed through his mind. That's my body. This was his last thought in this life. The back of the mecha opened. Luo Yan jumped out of the mecha to the ground, put on a wooden mask again, and then walked towards Fang Chang's body. Just now, he was in the mecha, turning on the Wu Wang burning eyes, and had already seen through Fang Chang's thoughts. He deliberately turned on the mecha to divert Fang Chang's attention, and then beheaded him with one knife. That was the end of it. Luo Yan looked around. Iron Horse Guanpeng, Team 7 He Junai, each with their own people gathered. They also dealt with their opponents. Looking at the beer factory that had become a ruin, Luo Yan crossed out the name of the organization Zuanhu in his heart. Once Zuanhu was gone, it was equivalent to crippling one of Liu Zhao's arms, and it also reduced the variables. Even if Zuanhu did not intend to help Liu Zhao this time. But they took Liu Zhao's commission, attacked Luo Yan, and did not seek to resolve the situation like Jiuying Feng afterwards, which gave Luo Yan enough reason to launch the attack tonight. Waving his hand, Luo Yan asked everyone to go first. He swept Fang Chang's body with Wu Wang's Zhu Yan, then bent down and took out a password box from Fang Chang's pocket. There was a fingerprint lock on the box, so Luo Yan picked up Fang Chang's hand and pressed it. There was a light click. The box opened, and inside was a memory card with a label on it, which read secret method, Feng Lion and the number. Luo Yan put away the memory card, threw the box on the body, returned to the mecha, and turned away. Asterisk 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 also on this night, the former number 3 forbidden area Misty Canyon is now just a desolate canyon. But in the place where the Overlord Beast fought that day, in the depths of the canyon, a piece of green grass grew somewhere. On the grass, there were also strange flowers and young trees. These flowers and plants exuded an unusual fragrance, and the surface of the young trees was occasionally emitting a faint scarlet glow. This night, the moon was high in the sky, and there were no clouds in the sky. So when a black shadow came from the distance of the canyon, it soon cast a huge black shadow on the ground. The black shadow seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving quickly. Finally, it came to the canyon, and came to the sky above the exotic flowers and plants. Then the black shadow gradually shrank, but it was a creature floating in the air. This huge creature, with a body like a shuttle, is nearly 50 meters long from head to tail, with a large head and a thin body, and is generally in the shape of an anchor. It has 4 tentacles, and a pair of dorsal and ventral horns on its head. The eyeballs grow below the head, and there is another mouthpart. The body has 3 sections, and there are 2 long tentacles at the end of the tail. This creature looks like an anchor flea that parasitizes fish. It floats in the air, opens its mouthparts, and bites a young tree. In a flash, the whole young tree was eaten into its mouth. The young tree was not even a toothpick in its mouth, but it made the creature's eyes roll around, as if it was extremely excited. Then it raised its head, and its mouthparts opened and closed regularly, as if it was screaming, but no sound came out. However, after the creature screamed for a while, the originally clear night sky suddenly changed. Thick clouds came from nowhere and quickly covered the sky, blocking the moonlight and making the earth dark. In the thick clouds in the sky, thunder was faintly heard. The strange creature floating on the ground seemed to be summoned by something, and its segmented body rose and fell together, swimming towards the sky. It drilled into the clouds and went deep into the clouds. A moment later, in front of this strange creature, a wingfin shining with colorful light slowly passed in the thick clouds. The wingfin was so large that the strange creature, which looked like an anchor flea, was as small as a parasite in front of it. Soon, the strange creature really crawled into the gap between the fins like a parasite. It disappeared. **** Silver Bay Base. This base is located near the bay. The predecessor of the base was an ordinary seaside town. There is a small harbor here. After the giant disaster, the once destroyed port was repaired. At this time, the undulating waves kept hitting the dock, and the small ships on it kept swaying with the waves. In the small town, most of the buildings near the bay were destroyed. This was damaged by the giant beast from the sea. But the giant beast from the sea was eventually killed. Now, the bones of the giant beast are still stored on the beach in the bay. It has become a paradise for seabirds. But now it is winter, the sea breeze is cold, and the seabirds have disappeared. However, there is a power plant of its own in the base, and it also has heating. It allows the residents of the base to survive this cold winter. Of course, whether it is electricity or heating, it cannot be provided free of charge. If you can't pay, you will be driven out of the base. The base does not support credit, and there is no mercy. This is the norm on the surface. There is no warm and affectionate interpersonal relationship here, only cold and cruel rules of survival. When Luo Yan, wearing a cloak and a mask, walked towards the gate of the base, several men with pale hair, dark skin and tattered clothes were pushed to the ground by soldiers. "Please, give us a few more days. We are injured, but the injuries will heal soon. We can make money once the injuries heal. Don't chase us away." Luo Yan was silent in his heart. On the surface, although injuries will not lead to immediate death, they will be pushed to death little by various things. He did not stop, passed by these people, paid the fee, and walked into the base. When he walked into the gate, Luo Yan saw a tall industrial plant at first glance. There are food processing plants, water plants and weapons factories inside. They are the cornerstones of the existence of a base. Without them, the base cannot operate. Luo Yan was acting out of character this time, and did not keep a low profile. He was wearing a cloak and a wooden mask, which made him eye-catching. Now he was walking in the middle of the avenue, attracting a lot of attention. Chapter 353, Ruining the Scene. At night, in the Yinwen base, the windows of every house were brightly lit. Although it was not as bright as the lights of thousands of houses, nor as good as the scene before the giant disaster, for now, such a base was already a paradise for the survivors on the surface. Luo Yan walked around the base slowly and finally chose the largest bar in the base. But when he walked forward, Two big men with tattoos on their arms walked up to the door of the bar and stopped Luo Yan with their hands. Luo Yan raised his head and threw something out of his cloak without saying a word. It fell into the hands of one of the big men. The big man looked down and saw that it was a pill, and it was an anti-inflammatory drug. This was comparable to gold on the surface. The big man smiled and nodded to his companion, then made way and pushed open the heavy door for Luo Yan. Luo Yan walked in, and the huge sound waves in the bar came to his face, and there were cheers and cheers everywhere. It was the peak time for the bar business. The air was filled with the strong aroma of alcohol and noisy sounds. There was a boxing ring in the middle of the bar. Two boxers were fighting on it. The onlookers raised their glasses and cheered or cursed loudly. Luo Yan walked straight to an empty table in front of him, pulled out a chair, and sat down. Just as he was about to put the Huan Lang on the edge of the chair, a hand slapped it down forcefully, making the table shake. Luo Yan raised his head slightly, his eyes through the mask, and fell on a man. The man had thick eyebrows and fierce eyes, and said in a low voice, "This table is occupied." Luo Yan glanced at him, then threw another anti-inflammatory drug on the table. The man shrugged his eyebrows, put away the pills, and then stretched out his hand to press on Luo Yan's shoulder. "Boy, hand over all the pills on you. I can guarantee that you will come out alive. Otherwise, you have to say less." Clang. In the bar, a knife light broke through the air and flashed across the man's hand in an instant. The hand broke and fell to the ground. The man was stunned for a moment, then he held the broken arm and screamed and stepped back, knocking over a table and causing chaos. Many people in the bar looked at Luo Yan. The man with one arm cut off shouted, "How dare you do this? Do you know where this is? You're dead." Before he finished speaking, an invisible ripple swept across the man's neck. The man's whole body shook, his eyes widened, and then his head rolled down, and the headless corpse sitting on the chair spurted out a fountain of blood. Suddenly, screams and exclamations were heard in the bar. The drinkers rushed out of the bar, some broke the door, and some went out through the window. After a while of chaos, the bar was in a mess. Tables and chairs fell to the ground, and food and beer were thrown all over the floor. Soon, big men with flesh on their faces, holding knives and guns, surrounded Luo Yan. Luo Yan then said, "1 glass of beer." The leading big man twitched his mouth and said, "Boy, you dare to ask for beer. You are really brave." Luo Yan did not respond. The big man was about to raise his hand to shoot, and someone shouted, "Stop it. Are you blind? They dared to stay after killing someone. Do you think your broken gun can deal with it?" A skinny old man with a plaster on his face walked over with his hands behind his back. "Uncle Rang." The big men spoke in unison. The old man waved his hand, touched his beard, and smiled. "Guest, I know you are not ordinary. But, my small shop does not allow blood to be seen. Besides, you smashed my shop like this. Look." Before he finished speaking, the old man saw Luo Yan throw a bulging waste bag on the table. The old man was startled, and then winked at the big man next to him. The big man walked up, opened the waste bag, and poured out everything inside. There was a crackling sound, and the table was full of medicines, all kinds of medicines, which made the old man's eyes widen. "Is it enough?" Luo Yan asked coldly. The old man laughed. "Enough, enough. Hurry up, throw this blind thing out to feed the dogs. Also, give this gentleman a glass of wine, good wine." In a short while, the bodies in the bar had been carried away, the blood was washed away, and it soon returned to normal. However, in such a large bar, only the bartender, the thugs and Luo Yan were left. After a while, the door of the bar was finally pushed open. Luo Yan, who had his back to the door, heard someone calling out, "Good evening, Master Liu. Master Liu, please take a seat." The sound of footsteps came slowly. Then, Luo Yan's eyes darkened, and a figure sat down. It was a man who looked quite handsome, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, and was as delicate as a college student. Liu Zhao. He raised his glasses and laughed. "Captain Shiggy, you are so angry that you made such a big noise." Luo Yan said indifferently, "Captain Liu Zhao is holding my mecha. It's hard for me to stay calm." Liu Xiao shook his head, leaned forward, and lowered his voice. I'll say it again. Zhang Ze's mecha is not the property of the organization, and it has nothing to do with you. Also, you are very brave. You dare to come in alone. Do you think I dare not kill you? As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the bar was pushed open, and a bald man with fierce eyes and a ferocious expression walked in, touching his head. He sat on the high chair next to the bar, ordered a beer, and smiled at Luo Yan with ill intentions. People walked in from the door one after another. Some of them sat at a table with several people, or ordered a glass of wine by themselves. They sat around the bar in a scattered manner, but vaguely surrounded Luo Yan. Luo Yan was unmoved. He whispered from the mask, so, this matter is not negotiable? Liu Xiao laughed, shook his head and leaned back. Who do you think Liu is? Don't think that you can do whatever you want with Yukiashu as your backer. In this Yinwen base, even Yukiashu has to lie down. Luo Yan stood up, picked up the Huan Long, and prepared to leave. Liu Xiao said slowly, sit down. Do you think you can leave without my permission? At that moment, the bald man next to the bar and the men in the bar all stood up. Liu Xiao drank slowly and said slowly, now you have two choices. One is to surrender to me and break up with Yukiashu immediately. The other is to let me send you out of the city, of course, in the form of a corpse. This was a response to Luo Yan's threat in Guanglingju building last time. Unlike last time, Yukiashu was not present this time, and even the Red Ghost was only one person. Yinwen base was his home ground. Chenling from Team 4 also brought a few good players, and was now lying in ambush outside the bar. Except for the fact that Zhu and Hu did not show up as scheduled for some unknown reason, Liu Xiao's forces against Team 7 were all present. He could not find a reason why he would lose. Chapter 354 I'll be waiting for you outside the base. The atmosphere in the bar was heavy and tense. The heavy door was pushed open again. Then, a cold wind blew into the room, causing the temperature in the bar to drop. Several people came in one after another. The one walking in front was a cold-faced middle-aged man. His messy hair was blown by the wind and danced like a ball of dark flame. His eyes were cold, and he glanced at the people in the bar lightly. He came to the table of Liu Xiao and Luo Yan in silence, pulled out a chair, and sat down. Liu Xiao was stunned at first, then pushed his glasses and laughed. What wind blew Captain Yu here? The man called Yu did not respond. A fat man with a smile on his face said, it's because of you, Mr. Liu, that our captain was worried and had to follow to take a look. The fat man came to Luo Yan, stretched out his hand, and said with a smile, Wang Jingao from the Yinwen base law enforcement team, may I ask you something? Luo Yan looked at his hand and did not move, but a voice came from the mask, Chigi. It turns out to be Mr. Chigi, nice to meet you. After saying that, the fat man looked at his captain. Yu, the captain of the law enforcement team, raised his hand and placed it on the table, tapping it lightly. Fatty Wang understood. What the captain means is that it is better for everyone to live in harmony. If something goes wrong, no one will be better off. He turned around and shouted to the old man who was huddled in the corner with almost no sense of presence. Don't you think this makes sense, Uncle Rang? The Uncle Rang face twitched. Then he walked over slowly with his hands behind his back. I'm old and can't stand the tossing. I hope you two will be merciful. Just think of it as giving face to our base law enforcement team and to Captain Yu. Speak nicely and live in harmony. How about it? Although he said this to the three people, the old man looked at Liu Xiao. This was a very smooth move. He didn't offend anyone with his words. Finally, his eyes fell on Liu Xiao to give enough face, meaning that the key to the matter still lies with Liu Xiao. Liu Xiao was greatly pleased, laughed, and looked at the captain of the law enforcement team. Don't look at the monk's face, look at the Buddha's face. Today, for the sake of Captain Yu's Rangyi, let's just let it go. Hearing this, Fatty Wang breathed a sigh of relief, not knowing whether it was true or false. But at this time, Liu Xiao looked at Luo Yan again. Get out, while I haven't changed my mind yet. Go back to Qingyang and Liqiqiyushu. Maybe if you serve that woman well, she will stand up for you. At this time, the law enforcement team leader Yu, the fat man Wang Jingao, and the bar owner Ang Yi, everyone changed color. Get out. Next to the bar, the bald Liu Bei with a ferocious face suddenly threw a cup on the ground. Get out. Get out. Get out. The shouts and curses were directed at Luo Yan, like a surging tide, trying to drown him. Luo Yan seemed not to hear it. In the mask, the red eyes reflected the figure of Liu Zhao, and said lightly, "I'll wait for you outside the base." After saying that, he floated away. There was a chorus of boos and curses from the door. Only when the door was closed did Rang Yi feel relieved. He looked at Liu Zhao again, and a flash of anger flashed in his eyes. Liu Zhao's eyes also flashed with surprise, but he kept smiling, stood up, and bowed to Yu and Rang Yi to say goodbye. He returned to his residence, glanced at the calligraphy on the wall, and chuckled. That red ghost is quite patient. He was able to bear such a great humiliation, and not take action. Yes. Just now in the bar, he deliberately angered Luo Yan. If Luo Yan couldn't help but take action, then he would have a reason to suppress him, and he could even drag the base law enforcement team and Rang Yi and other forces into the water. With the help of these forces, he could strengthen his own strength and kill the red ghost in one fell swoop, eliminating the trouble forever. Unfortunately, Luo Yan restrained himself and didn't give him a chance. Bald Liu Bei touched his head and said, "That law enforcement team is simply a bunch of dogs. They follow us wherever we go. It's annoying." Liu Zhao said indifferently, "We have 4 mechs in the base, and there are only a few mechs in the Yinwen base. I would be nervous too. The law enforcement team doesn't need to care about them. As long as we don't have any evidence to be caught by them, we can do whatever we want, and the law enforcement team can only turn a blind eye." Liu Bei grinned again. "Master, when are we going to kill the red ghost?" Liu Zhao glanced at him and said, "Don't worry about that kid. We should eat, drink and play in the base. Let that kid starve outside. This is our home court, but the red ghost is an outsider. How long do you think an outsider can stay outside the base? He can keep his composure now, but I don't believe he can keep his composure like this. As long as he is anxious, he will make mistakes, and I will guide him to make him clash with the base. In that case, the base will destroy him without us even having to do anything. Even if we can't kill him, we can still seriously injure his vitality. Then we can pick up the ready-made ones. Isn't it 100 times better than going out and fighting him to the death now?" Liu Bei laughed and said, "You are still smart. Then let's wait." Liu Zhao nodded. Wait. Asterisk 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 outside the base, Luo Yan came to an abandoned factory outside the city. In a factory full of debris, Luo Yan met Wei Junai, Guan Peng and others. "Mr. Chigi is back." Guan Peng greeted Luo Yan warmly and handed him a bowl of hot broth. Luo Yan didn't rush to drink it. He took it and said, "I just saw Liu Zhao in the base." Wei Junai said in a deep voice, "Captain, you are too risky. You should take us with you." Guan Peng also nodded. "Yes, more people, so that we can take care of each other if something happens." Luo Yan said calmly, "It doesn't matter. Even if something happens, I'm sure I can leave." His dragon transformation, his primordial spirit shadow, plus many unique skills. Even if he is defeated, Luo Yan is still confident that he can protect himself. After all, this is a surface base, and there are not so many masters and strong men on the surface. In addition, this is the only way to test the attitude of the base. Just like before, I was at a disadvantage, but even so, the base did not stand with Liu Zhao. It seems that the relationship between Yinwen base and Liu Zhao is very tense. I asked Liu Zhao to come outside the city to solve it, but he should not come. Even if the relationship with the base is tense, this is still his home court. If I were him, I would leave the red ghost outside the city and do it at ease. Wait until this outsider gets anxious, impatient, and makes a mistake, then take action against him. So, Liu Zhao should be a coward next. We will know after 2 or 3 days. Guan Peng said, "What if the guy surnamed Liu doesn't leave the city? We can't just kill him, right?" Luo Yan smiled. He lifted a corner of the mask, drank a sip of the broth, and answered the question irrelevantly. "When I was a child, I read a text called The Crow and the Pitcher. Chapter 355. Crow drinks water." Guan Peng and the others were bewildered. It was not that they had not read this text, but they just didn't know why Chiggy mentioned this text now. Luo Yan put on his mask again and said, "The base is a bottle, Liu Zhao is the water, and we are the crows waiting to drink water. What if the water is at the bottom of the bottle and can't be drunk?" Wang Shan, who looked clever, raised his hand, "Throw a stone into the bottle and let the water come up by itself." Luo Yan nodded, "Yes, that's it." After discussing the details of drinking water with Guan Peng and others, Luo Yan returned to his modified RV. When he was sorting out his things, he saw the memory card he got from Fang Chang. So he took a card reader, inserted the memory card, and checked the information inside. The memory card contains the practice method of secret method, Feng Lion. This secret method can improve explosive power, flexibility, and speed, and allow people to glide for a short time, but the premise requires wind and airflow. In general, this secret method can hardly improve immediate combat power, except for the effect of short gliding. The rest overlaps with Kailing Lun. It was quite useless to Luo Yan, but he still learned it. It is good to have many skills, and he might need them someday. Moreover, these useless secrets can be used as rewards to his teammates in the future. It cannot be said that they are completely useless. After learning the secrets, Luo Yan began to practice, but unfortunately he had no Yuan Peiji and his practice was slow. But Luo Yan thought again that he still had contribution points in the giant beast strategic mansion. Those were the contribution points he got in the Death Gate evil battle. In this way, after solving the matter of Liu Zhao, he could exchange them with the strategic mansion after returning. I don't know how many contribution points it takes to get a Yuan Peiji. Judging from its effect, it is probably not cheap. Luo Yan gritted his teeth. It was not cheap, but he had to exchange it. Now he had to do many things at once, not only to improve his status and authority in the Black Witch organization, but also to strive to break through the Tangxuan realm as soon as possible. After all, no one knew when the red poison would attack the heart and brain. This sense of urgency made Luo Yan dare not relax. The next day, the things that Yukiashu promised arrived. A high-level mecha rented to Luo Yan, and 2 Zuanjis that came to support, of course, equipped with mecha masters. In addition, there is a secret weapon that Luo Yan spent a lot of money to buy from Yukiashu. Next, Luo Yan tried to empathize with the mecha, and the result was very smooth. He could drive the mecha without using wireless resonance. Even if it was a high-level mecha like the White Dragon, it was a little uncomfortable to drive a lower-level mecha now. Even if it was a high-level mecha, compared to the mecha of the dungeon core, whether it was the outer armor material, the supercore matrix or even the driving system, it was inferior. Therefore, Luo Yan, who was used to driving the White Dragon, and had developed a sense of driving, was asked to drive the current mecha. It was like driving a sports car and suddenly driving an ordinary car. The driver would feel uncomfortable. It took Luo Yan 2 whole days to adjust and basically understand the performance of the mecha so as not to have any accidents in actual combat. In the past 3 days, Liu Zhao really did not leave the base, which confirmed Luo Yan's idea. On the 4th day, the plan of the crow drinks water began to be implemented. A convoy was heading to Yinwen base. To be precise, it was a caravan. The caravans in Yinwen base were not all from the forbidden area. Some of them specialized in operating supplies and reselling goods. Just like this one now. The caravan consisted of 2 supply trucks and more than a dozen escort vehicles. On the escort vehicles, the fully armed soldiers looked around vigilantly, and they did not dare to relax, even when they were close to the base. At this time, the tires of several escort vehicles in front suddenly burst, and one car after another quickly lost balance and overturned on the ground. The convoy stopped in a hurry, and then someone in front shouted, "Be careful, there are car blocking spikes, there may be robbers." As soon as the voice fell, there was a whistling sound, and a series of grey shadows fell into the convoy in a parabolic shape, releasing thick smoke immediately. The smoke also carried a pungent smell that made people cry and snot if they accidentally inhaled it. This is tear gas. The guards hired by this caravan were quite experienced. When they saw something was wrong, they put on gas masks. Although gas masks can block the attack of tear gas mist, they are still blocked in the thick fog. At this time, a huge voice sounded, "Listen, caravan in front, our Liu Yi has already taken a fancy to your goods. If you know what's good for you, surrender immediately. Otherwise, don't blame us for killing you." This seemed to be a recorded broadcast, which was played repeatedly. At the same time, figures quickly rushed into the thick fog, pounced on the caravan guards, and knocked them to the ground in a few moves. 5 minutes later, 2 trucks full of goods were driven away. The boss of the caravan was stripped naked and thrown on the ground. When the guards brought him clothes to wear, the boss was so angry that his lips turned blue and his body trembled. "This is too much. This is too much. What does Liu mean by robbing people openly? Is there any law? Come on, follow me to the base to argue. I want to see how long Yinwen base will protect that Liu. Asterisk 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 Yinwen base." Liu woke up at noon, pushed away the woman who was wrapped around him like an octopus, and took a shower and changed clothes. Just as he came to the restaurant downstairs to prepare for dinner, he heard a commotion outside, and then heard the roar of his confidant Yubei. Liu came to the living room curiously, and saw that the door had been pushed open. Yubei and several team members retreated into the living room, and glared at the people who broke into the living room. The people who broke into the living room included Yu, the captain of the law enforcement team, Wang Panzi who often followed Yu, and several law enforcement team members. In addition, there was a middle-aged man with a wealthy face and a soldier who was obviously a mercenary. "What is this?" Liu spread his hands. "Everyone, what happened?" The wealthy middle-aged man immediately pointed at Liu and shouted, "You are still pretending to be confused. Hey, tell me quickly, where did you hide my goods?" Liu looked confused. "What goods? I don't even know who you are." Law enforcement team leader Yu moved his hands, and the fat man Wang Jingao came out and said with a smile on his face, "This is Boss Xing Feng. Boss Cheng's caravan was robbed near our base. The strange thing is that the robbers actually claimed that they were ordered by you, Master Liu. Boss Cheng also found it strange and found our law enforcement team. Our captain Yu thinks there must be some misunderstanding here, so he brought Boss Cheng here to hear what you have to say, Master Liu." Liu frowned and said, "This is clearly a false accusation. A rabbit does not eat grass near its burrow. Even if I, Liu, wanted to rob, I would not be stupid enough to do it near the base." He said, "Oh again, I see. This must have been done by Liu's enemies. Maybe it was the red ghost who did it. Captain Yu, you should have seen through such a simple frame up a long time ago, right?" Chapter 356. It's not that we are incompetent, it's that the enemy is too cunning. Yu, the captain of the law enforcement team, had a slight movement of his eyes. Wang Jingao, the fat man beside him, said on behalf of the captain, "Whether this is a frame up or not, we need to investigate it thoroughly and have sufficient evidence to confirm it. This time we came here with Boss Cheng just to figure this out." The bold Yubei's face turned ferocious on the spot. "Fatty, what do you mean? What do you mean by whether it is a frame up or not? Do you mean you don't trust us?" Fatty Wang laughed. "We are the law enforcement team, and everything must be based on evidence. Whether you are framed or wronged, there must be evidence, right? There is a saying that words are not enough. If everyone makes a complaint with just their mouths, how can our law enforcement team handle it impartially?" Yu nodded heavily to express his affirmation. Yubei wanted to step forward to argue, but Liu raised his hand to stop him. Then he smiled. "How about this, Mr. Cheng? Your losses will be charged to Mr. Liu. How much is your batch of goods worth? Give me a list, and I'll quote it to you. What do you think?" Xing Feng muttered, "That's about right." Liu looked at Yu from the law enforcement team. "Captain Yu, Boss Cheng agreed. Then what do you think about this?" Yu looked at the fat man Wang Jingao and winked. Fatty Wang immediately understood and said with a smile, "Then we won't bother you anymore. Goodbye, goodbye." As he finished speaking, there was a noise outside, and then several more people squeezed in. Xing Feng saw one of them and said, "Boss Zhao, why are you here?" Boss Zhao shook his head and then took Yu's arm. "Captain Yu, it's great that you are here. I just went to the law enforcement team to find you. You have to give us justice." I worked so hard to bring the goods from King Jiuying. They were about to enter the base, but they were snatched away by this Liu. You said that, if you open a store on his territory, you should get some dividends or something, and we would accept it. But now he is getting more and more demanding. He just said, Liu Zhao, like this stuff, and snatched it directly. Liu Zhao's expression changed immediately. Yu looked at him again. Liu Zhao snorted. Liu has never done it. It's obvious that someone is framing me. I could have ignored it, but since it's Boss Zhao, I'm willing to compensate you for your losses this time. It was not until 1 o'clock in the afternoon that the law enforcement team and the two bosses were sent away. Liu Zhao paid a total of tens of millions of work points. After the door was closed, Yu Bei said, Master, this is clearly a frame up. We don't need to care about it at all. Liu Zhao shook his head and said, Yu is always looking for a chance to drive us away. If I don't pay for the goods, he will definitely ask me to assist in the investigation. In that case, the base will have to find out everything we do and how much we earn. Yu Bei suddenly realized why Liu Zhao became so easy to talk to. Liu Zhao snorted and said, this must be the work of Jiuying. This bastard actually played such a trick. Yu Bei smiled grimly and said, Master, let me take the brothers out for a walk and kill that Jiuying kid. Kill him? Just you? Do you think you have a chance of winning against Zhang Zhen? Liu Zhao said mercilessly. Yu Bei scratched his head. What should I do? Liu Zhao snorted. The red ghost is trying to lure me out. Don't be fooled. Just let him go. If I'll let you go, you will just give him your head for nothing. I won't do such a stupid thing. 2 such incidents have happened now. You take a few people to inform the Zhao and Cheng people and ask them to go to the base to complain and ask the base to eliminate the robbers. The base has the obligation to protect the personal and property safety of residents. Unless the base doesn't want to continue, they will have to deal with the red ghost for me. My 10 million will not be wasted. After all, they took Liu Zhao's money and were afraid of Liu Zhao's influence in Yinwen base. After being beaten by Yu Bei, Cheng Fengchen and Boss Zhao went to the base office together and asked the base to send troops to eliminate the bandits. Yinwen base had no reason to refuse, so they naturally agreed. That afternoon, a team was sent out of the base to search for the so-called robbers. In this way, a week passed in a blink of an eye. During this week, another 7 or 8 caravans were robbed. All the robbers were under the banner of Liu Zhao, and every action was quick and efficient. Moreover, they only hurt people and took goods, but did not kill people. Later, once the caravan heard the name Liu Zhao, they would just abandon the goods and leave with the people. Anyway, as long as they returned to the base, they could ask Liu Zhao for money. In addition, because the robbers only robbed things and did not kill people, and it seemed that they were targeting Liu Zhao, Yinwen base turned a blind eye. In recent years, Liu Zhao has built up a huge power in the base, and there is a trend of replacing the base. Therefore, Yinwen base is very afraid of the surname Liu, and naturally recognizes that someone is looking for trouble with him. Anyway, as long as the other party does not kill people, Yinwen base will pretend to send out several bandit suppression teams one after another. Once they leave the base, they will find a safe place to kill time and wait until they return to the base in the evening and then deal with it. When Liu Zhao sent people to ask about it, he tried his best to shirk it. In short, the principle is it's not that we are incompetent, but that the enemy is too cunning. Liu Zhao couldn't do anything about the base. After a week, he had paid nearly 50 million yuan in compensation for the goods. If he continued to pay, he would go bankrupt. Finally, that night, Liu Zhao gathered his men and assigned tasks. Some were responsible for going out of the city to find out the whereabouts of the red ghost, and some were responsible for debugging the mechs to prepare for the attack. In his eyes, this was a bad idea, but he couldn't afford to waste time, and the base made it clear that it would not get involved. He had to do it himself. 2 more days passed. Early in the morning of this day, the sound of mechs moving came from the direction of the mecha warehouse. In the office of the base's law enforcement team, Yu brushed his teeth and stood at the window, watching a total of 4 mechs in the distance walk out of the warehouse. Gurgle gurgle. Wang Jingao touched his stomach and said, "Captain, don't look at it. Liu can't sit still and wants to go out to solve it himself. Yeah, if I lose 50 million in a week, I will hang myself with a rope. The fat man said again. But who is that red ghost? How dare he provoke Liu's ire like this? Yu spit out the foam from his mouth, wiped his mouth with a towel, and raised his left eyebrow. Captain, do we have to go out too? I understand. Picking up bargains, right? I know this. The fat man said excitedly, but his face was long again. But we don't have mechs. If we get involved, we will be dead, right? Yu spoke at this time. I say, don't mind your own business, eat. Wang Jingao was stunned for a moment, then whispered, did I misunderstand? You clearly jumped your left eyebrow just now. Usually, jumping the side of the eyebrow means picking up bargains. When did it become, don't mind your own business? Outside the city, in the cockpit of the advanced machine butcher, a map appeared on the command console, and an abandoned factory was marked. First use the radar to scan the nearby high energy reactions to confirm that there are no mechs. Liu sneered in his helmet and then said, all machines bombard, saturation fire, and blow the red ghost into slag. Chapter 357 Secret Weapon. Liu knew about the situation of Team 7. Team 7 had just been integrated not long ago, and now it has basically established a foothold in the underground city of Guangling. It has established its own power, the Red Gate, and recently solved the infiltration of the Yellow Spring organization. In turn, it took over the Jiuying group, and both personnel and assets have grown explosively. But it has not been fully digested yet, and it will take some time. As for the core of Team 7, led by the captain, the Red Ghost, a main battle team of about 30 people has been assembled. The average combat power of the team members is around the primary 3rd level. Among them, there are 3 with stronger combat power, all above the primary 4th level. The captain, the Red Ghost, is undoubtedly the strongest in the entire team. The intelligence obtained before shows that he is at the level of the intermediate 2nd level, and has mastered at least 2 secret methods, with super combat power. Even Zhangze, the former captain of Team 7, who is at a high level, was killed by him due to carelessness. Now that some time has passed, I'm afraid that the Red Ghost has broken through and has reached the intermediate 3rd level. However, Team 7 has a fatal shortcoming. Mecha. They don't have mecha. Without mechs, it is useless for the captain and members to be strong. Mechs can increase combat power a lot, otherwise they can't fight against the Behemoth. Therefore, Team 7 without mechs is destined to be a useless team. On the other hand, Team 3. Liu's strength is comparable to Zhangze, and Yubei also has the combat power of the primary grade perfection. There are 4 other mechs, and Yubei is currently driving Zhangze's advanced mecha. In addition to Team 4 who came to support, Chenling also drove a mecha, although it was only an intermediate mecha. But with these conditions added together, Liu thought he had the winning ticket in his hands. However, he was also very cautious. Even though Yubei had found out that Team 7 was hiding in the abandoned factory, Liu did not take it too seriously and drove the mecha out directly. He even let Chenling fall behind a little and was ready to support at any time. He used all his advantages to make a thundering blow. At this time, including his butcher, 4 mechs bombarded the abandoned factory fiercely, especially Liu fired a missile into the factory. That was a missile used against behemoths. Suddenly, the factory, which occupied a large area, was blown up into the sky. The flames shot up into a huge fireball, raising countless buildings to the ground. The rifles of other mechs roared continuously, forming a dense barrage of bullets, and carried out a blanket attack on the factory area. The saturated firepower coverage almost turned the entire factory area over. Even if there were underground bunkers in the factory area, they would be blown to pieces. In the cab, Liu smiled gloomily. He had already begun to imagine that, after killing the Red Ghost, he would go to Guangling and personally accept the assets of Team 7. He felt more and more that his transfer to the Yinwen base was the wisest move. When the Huanquan organization failed that day, Liu expected that the Red Ghost might learn of his existence from the Huanquan organization. According to the Red Ghost's always vigorous style, it is very likely that he would immediately declare war on him. So he left the underground city overnight and came to the base. He came to the base to make it easier to deal with the Red Ghost and to prevent the Red Ghost from reporting the matter and the organization from defining him as a traitor. But now it seems that there is no reaction from within the organization. This is probably because in the eyes of the organization's top leaders, they think they are more valuable than the Red Ghost, so they turn a blind eye to some things. Think about it. How much have I contributed to the organization over the years? How can a Red Ghost compare? Thinking of this, Liu Xiao's mouth corners unconsciously raised and then calmed down very restrainedly. Rumble. The sound of the abandoned factory being attacked can be heard even by people far away in the base. Standing on a high place, you can even see the rolling dust in that direction, and when the wind from the bay blows, it sends bursts of thick smoke towards the base. This bombing lasted for a long time. It didn't stop until the ammunition was used up. In the cab, Liu Xiao looked at the dust in the sky through the panoramic window. Just when he was about to ask someone to check, a multifunctional reconnaissance radar frantically sounded the alarm. On the radar, you can see a circle of blue ripples spreading rapidly. Liu Xiao was shocked when he saw it. It was a high-frequency electromagnetic pulse wave. In just a moment, a light blue electromagnetic pulse whizzed past the butcher and other mechs. All of a sudden, all 4 mechs trembled. The electric current in the body roared. Countless electronic components short-circuited, and the system shut down. Suddenly, except for the 2 advanced mechs of Liu Xiao and Yu Bei, which were designed to prevent electromagnetic pulses, and were not affected much, the other 2 Zhuanges of Team 3 and Shenling's mecha of Team 4 were all paralyzed. The light in the mecha's eyes flashed twice, and then it stopped moving, and no longer moved. Liu Xiao then shouted, "It's an electromagnetic pulse weapon. That factory is a trap. Team 7 is not in it at all." Although he noticed it, it was too late. Just behind the butcher, a red mecha suddenly rushed out, holding a rapid-fire machine gun in both hands. Pointing at the butcher, it fired decisively. Boom, boom, boom. The roar of the rapid-fire machine gun was deafening, and the flames from the muzzle made the mecha outline a golden edge. The powerful bullets made the armor behind the butcher explode continuously, and there were flashes of electric fire. Yu Bei wanted to help, but unexpectedly, the 2 mechs supported by Yukiashu also unveiled their disguises and appeared decisively, attacking the mecha green snake that originally belonged to Zhang Ze. In the cab, Luo Yang had a calm expression. Before setting off, he purchased an electromagnetic pulse bomb from Yukiashu. This is a secret weapon to deal with the 3 teams of mechs. Although he knew that high-level mechs all had anti-electromagnetic armor layers, the bomb was not very useful to Liu Xiao's vehicle, but it could paralyze other low-end mechs and reduce resistance, which Luo Yan felt was enough. In addition, he deliberately leaked the location of the abandoned factory to Yu Bei, who came to check it out. He also arranged the mechs outside the factory in advance and turned on the anti-reconnaissance system, so Liu Xiao didn't find out in advance. Liu Xiao had calculated everything, but he didn't expect that Team 7 could get mechs. At this time, just when the butcher had to put up a shield to resist, and the 2 mechs of Team 3 were temporarily suppressed. In addition, a team suddenly appeared near the 2 temporarily paralyzed Zhuanges. One of them was the Iron Horse mercenary group. Guan Peng personally led the team, and led the team members to the outside of the mecha's cab. Team member Wang Xian skillfully used the laser cutting machine to directly destroy the hatch of the cab, and then other team members who were well prepared threw flash bombs and tear gas bombs into it. Immediately, the mecha master in the cab could not see, and because the system was shut down, and he took off his helmet, he was choked by the tear gas and his eyes were full of tears and he couldn't stop coughing. Guan Peng immediately rushed in and suppressed him, but in just a few moments, the mecha master was tied up and couldn't move. Then Guan Peng restarted the system and received an electromagnetic pulse. The mecha was seriously damaged and its function dropped sharply, but several major devices were still able to operate. So Guan Peng asked someone to bring the mecha master over, wash off the previously recorded brainwave records, and then strip the mecha master naked and throw him out of the cab. Chapter 358, Fierce Battle. Crack. The rapid fire gun stopped, having run out of bullets. The armored shield of the butcher was also dented. In the cab, Liu Xiao was furious. He had wanted to catch Team 7 off guard, but ended up falling into a trap. In addition, Team 7 not only had mechs, but also 3 of them. If it wasn't for Yukiishu's help, Liuzao would never believe it. Now he felt more and more that Yukiishu and the Red Devil were having an affair. The two must be in love, otherwise why would Yukiishu help Team 7 at all costs? Thousands of thoughts flashed away. Liuzao was not swayed by his emotions. He calmly took out the battle axe slaughter, manifested his Yuanli, and condensed a mighty and domineering phantom of a headless warrior holding a Zuanhu axe. He looked delicate, but his kung fu was a wild and domineering route, and even his mecha was a heavy armored type. When the phantom appeared this time, the mecha immediately exuded a powerful momentum. At the same time, Liuzao heard the sound of the waves. It turned out that a majestic blue sea quietly emerged around the enemy plane. Behind the sea, there were 100,000 mountains. The shadows of the sea and mountains were thick and profound. Just a glance made Liuzao feel a little breathless. He was very surprised. After all, he was one level higher than the red ghost on the opposite side, but he could not overwhelm the opponent in momentum and connotation. Instead, he was slightly affected. It can be seen that the red ghost is not simple. The next moment, the two mechas rushed towards the opponent at the same time. During the sprint, two muffled bangs sounded from the back of the mecha driven by Luoyan, and the corresponding number of black shadows shot out. At the same time, several grey shadows shot out from the shoulder armor of the butcher. In a blink of an eye, the panoramic windows of both sides were bright at the same time, and everything disappeared, leaving only a vast expanse. Flash bomb. Both sides threw flash bombs at the opponent. In the cockpit, Liuzao cursed despicable. But he was still quite experienced, so he opened the armor on the chest of the mecha and fired a small missile to attack the surroundings, to prevent the enemy from taking advantage of the opportunity. At the same time, he controlled the mecha to roll sideways in a large range to avoid the opponent's long-range attack. All these operations can be said to be almost flawless, and it can also be seen that Liuzao is a real talent. But just after the butcher rolled out several circles and crushed a birch tree, the mecha stopped, and Liuzao saw several more black shadows shooting in front of the panoramic window. He just had time to open the filter net of the panoramic window and saw a grey outside. In the grey, a huge figure approached, but it was the red mecha of Chigi that jumped from the sky and slashed at him with a knife. Liuzao cursed inwardly, and at the same time, wondered how Chigi locked onto him. This reaction has exceeded the level of responding with the high energy reaction of the radar. It's as if the flash bomb did not affect Chigi's judgment. This is indeed the case. At the beginning of the battle, Luoyan opened the Wuan blazing eyes. Under the field of vision provided by this divine treasure, the strong light produced by the compound could not affect Luoyan at all. What's more, Luoyan also opened the prophet. Liuzao was only at the advanced second level. With his strength, he could not get rid of the calculation of the prophet. So when the butcher rolled away, Luoyan actually noticed it in advance. Without saying a word, he threw a few flash bombs first, and then chased after the mecha, and chopped with a knife. In a hurry, the butcher could not dodge, but Liuzao was not panicked. He let the mecha flip its wrist, and the battle axe slaughter lifted a light curtain, and slashed towards the chest of the enemy plane. This is a lose-lose style. If Luoyan was driving the previous white dragon now, he would definitely be happy to fight with Liuzao. After all, the white dragon has Tsui armor and a regeneration matrix. In addition, his skill viewing mountains and seas is enough to stack the defense of the white dragon to the level of a heavy-duty model, or even exceed the level of a heavy-duty model. Unfortunately, what he was driving was only an advanced mecha, and its material armor and matrix were far inferior to those of the white dragon. Luoyan did not want to fight with Liuzao, but with the help of the prophet, he knew it first. As soon as Liuzao's light curtain rose, Luoyan had already dodged it, and then dragged his long sword, carrying the great power of the sea tide, across the head of the butcher. The butcher's axe could not be cut down, and Luoyan's early displacement had already scared Liuzao, not to mention the subsequent knife that was slashed towards the cab. Liuzao let the mecha suddenly lean back, allowing the knife to pass over the panoramic window. Being in the cab, Liu Xiao could almost see the natural lines on the long sword. Then the mecha sprayed several flames, moving the butcher to slide back, pulling away, regrouping, and then rushing towards Liu Yan again. The two mechas fought fiercely. The butcher's attack was powerful and heavy, and he used combat skills from time to time, which was even more earth-shattering. Liu Yan relied on the prophet to always evade before Liu Xiao's attack hit him, and from time to time use the dragonfly skimming the water footwork to counter-attack with sword energy. The two mechas fought back and forth for several rounds, but no one was victorious. At this moment, a mysterious machine came to the battlefield. Through the panoramic window, Liu Xiao took a look and recognized it as the mecha of his subordinate Liu Jun. He was immediately overjoyed and called through the communication channel, "Liu Jun, interfere with the bastard Chigi for me. This guy's too flexible. Find a way to restrict him, and don't let him run around." There was a rustling sound in the communication channel. Liu Xiao was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that Liu Jun's communication network should be broken. After all, he just suffered a pulse attack, and it was good enough to be able to restart. So he repeated what he had just said through the mecha's external speaker. He was not afraid that Chigi would hear it, but wanted to use these words to distract Chigi's attention. The mecha immediately responded, took a sniper rifle from its back, and then pointed it at the red mecha. But just as the butcher rushed towards the enemy plane, his axe missed, and his movements froze. Liu Jun's mecha suddenly fired, and the bullet rotated at high speed, rubbing against the air to produce sparks, hitting one of the butcher's engines, exploding a fireball, lifting the armor, and causing Liu Xiao in the cockpit to shake violently and feel dizzy. Before he could figure out what was going on, he saw the red mecha rushing over, the long knife in its hand, stabbed into the main engine like lightning, and then poked it again. Suddenly, the mecha fragments flew everywhere, the engine exploded, and thick smoke rose. In the cockpit, Liu Xiao saw the lights of various instruments on the command console disappear quickly, and he couldn't help but hold his head and shouted, "No, no, no, no. If you think of a mecha as a car, the energy furnace is the battery, and the engine is the engine. The cooperation between the two is the premise for the mecha to move. Now that the main engine is destroyed, the mecha cannot operate even with the energy furnace." Liu Xiao could only make a quick decision, activate the emergency release device, and eject himself from the mecha. The moment he was out of the mecha, flames suddenly billowed in front of his sight. Red flames spewed out from the mouth of the mecha driven by Liu Yan. The flames were made of chemicals, and were hot and sticky. They immediately turned Liu Xiao into a fireball. He screamed and flew into the air, then fell into the forest in the distance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 359, Using Cannons to Kill Mosquitoes. If he had not been worried about destroying the butcher and being unable to recover the mecha, Liu Yan would have used his secret method and unique skills in the morning. And he would not have chosen the engine instead of the energy furnace as the target of attack like now. The reason is very simple. Normally, at the same level, the energy furnace is more expensive than the engine. At this moment, Liu Xiao turned into a fireball and fell into the forest. Suddenly, the fireball exploded and exploded into countless fire streams. Another figure quickly fell into the forest. Liu Yan said ha. In his Wu-Wang burning eyes, Liu Xiao's blood value was not reset to 0. That man is still alive. Liu Xiao is indeed still alive. He burst out his Yuanli and blew away his clothes in flames. He barely saved his life, but his whole body was severely burned. Even if he was cured now, he would become an ugly monster. But now Liu Xiao had no time to care about these, and he didn't even have the energy to think about why Liu Jun betrayed him. He fell to the ground in the forest and immediately ran with gritted teeth, regardless of the fact that his body was stuck together due to severe burns. These actions made him tear his flesh and blood and let the black blood and charred skin splash on the ground. God knows what kind of pain Liu Xiao is enduring now, but he has an amazing will, and the desire to survive overwhelms the pain. He runs in the woods like a savage. At this time, there was a sound of breaking air behind him. Liu Xiao looked up and looked with the remaining eye. He saw a huge black shadow falling from the sky. Liu Xiao wanted to scream, but at this time, he was severely burned and couldn't say a word. There were only two words circling in his mind. It's over. It was a missile. And it was a missile aimed at the behemoth. Let alone missiles. Even if it was an ordinary mecha rifle bullet. If you don't take precautions and don't dodge, even a high-level realm will be blown into a paste. Not to mention missiles. Flesh and blood. Facing such a weapon, even a high-level realm is useless. Unless you use some special divine treasures, you will have a chance to escape from such a killing weapon. It's a pity that Liu Xiao's divine treasures are to increase combat power, and there are no special or weird abilities. The missile fell. Boom. The whole forest shook violently, and a huge fireball rose into the sky. Countless trees were thrown into the air, shattered, and finally caught fire, and fell like raindrops. The impact of the explosion set off a strong wind, passing by the mechs. After the shock wave subsided, Liu Yan used the Wu Wang burning eyes to look again, and he could no longer see Liu Xiao's biological grey light. Bombing Liu Xiao with mecha missiles felt like using a cannon to kill a mosquito, and it was also expensive. However, after all, the opponent was in the advanced realm, and it was not a loss to be able to kill him with money. There were two reasons for Liu Xiao's disastrous defeat this time. First, he underestimated Team 7. He didn't expect the Red Ghost to be able to get a mecha, and he also misjudged Yu Qiushu's investment in Team 7. The second was Guanpeng. He never thought that there were other mecha masters in Team 7, nor did he think that Liu Jun's mecha would be snatched by Guanpeng and used against him. One wrong step leads to another. What's more, Liu Xiao made two wrong steps. Without paying attention to Liu Xiao, Liu Yan controlled the mecha and turned to run towards the remaining green snake of Team 3. The bold Yu Bei in the green snake was immediately disheartened when he saw his captain disappear in the flames of the missile explosion. He sighed, turned on the mecha and spoke. I surrender. You can also give this mecha to you. I have only one request. You can't kill me. Although he was Liu Xiao's confidant and was usually loyal to Liu Xiao, but now that Liu Xiao was dead, he naturally had to plan for his own life. He didn't have the hobby of sacrificing himself for his master, so he simply surrendered. I have the combat power of the primary great perfection, and I'm very familiar with the industry and personnel of Team 3. If Captain Chigi wants to successfully take over Team 3, I can help, and even be the bad guy. So you see, I still have some use. Liu Yan naturally didn't like people like Yu Bei. He appreciated people like Wen Junai more. But the bald man was telling the truth. With the help of someone like Yu Bei, it would be faster to take over Team 3 and digest their assets. Moreover, Yu Bei himself said that he was not afraid of being the bad guy. In this case, he had no better choice than to be loyal to Liu Yan. So Liu Yan said, okay, let's do it. He agreed immediately, but several things flashed through his mind. Several items in the Black Witch shop used to control subordinates. Asterisk 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 Yunwen base. Inside the Black Scorpion bar, a man was lying on the bar, reeking of alcohol and talking nonsense. At this time, the bar was pushed open, and a man in his 20s came over in a hurry and patted the man on the bar on the shoulder. Old Crossing, wake up. The man called Old Crossing staggered, propped up his head, and barely opened his eyes a crack. Liu Jun. Get lost. I'm off work. I said I would never work overtime. Even if Liu Xiao comes to find me, let him come back tomorrow. Anyway, I'm dead. He can kill me if he wants. But if you want me to work overtime, no way. His loud voice drowned out the other sounds in the bar, and Liu Jun looked embarrassed. Liu Jun could only whisper in his ear, Captain Liu is dead. The man was startled, and suddenly all sleepiness disappeared. He jumped up and grabbed Liu Jun's collar. Really? Liu Jun smiled bitterly. What good does lying do for me? Anyway, our Team 3 has changed. Captain Liu died in battle, Yu Bei rebelled, and now our Team 3 has been taken over by Team 7. From now on, the Red Ghost will be our leader. Hey. Old Crossing laughed. But, he died well. I, Crossing Chengang, have finally waited for this day. Come on, take me to see the man who killed Liu Zhao. I have to thank him. Liu Jun smiled bitterly. This middle-aged man had a deep hatred for Liu Zhao, but for some reason, he had to work for Liu Zhao. He could understand the feelings of old Crossing, but after hearing the middle-aged man's words, Liu Jun, who had not yet adjusted his mentality, felt quite uncomfortable. Come with me. He took old Crossing away, and after the two left, the people in the Black Scorpion bar ran out in a hurry. Not long after, the whole base knew the news of Liu Zhao's death. The base, the Mecha parking warehouse. Liu Yan was maintaining the long sword Huan Long, and heard Yu Bei next to him say, Captain Chigi, the person I told you about is here. Liu Yan raised his head, and saw the Mecha master Liu Jun leading a middle-aged man over. The man had a scruffy beard, a cigarette in his mouth, a bottle of white wine in his hand, and a work suit stained with engine oil. He was wearing a pair of slippers on his feet, revealing his black toes. Liu Yan saw this face, and said in disbelief, is this the Mecha engineer of your team 3? Yu Bei nodded. Crossing Chengang, among all the bases on the surface of the north, there is no engineer better than him. Chapter 360 Ransom. Old Crossing. Bold Yu Bei waved his hand. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Chigi. Mr. Chigi will replace Liu. Replace the guy with the surname Liu, and be our leader in the future. The middle-aged man with messy hair and untidy beard looked at Liu Yan for a few times, then raised his hand and shook the wine pot in his hand. I brewed the wine myself. If you kill Liu Zhao, I will treat you to a drink. He threw the wine pot to Liu Yan, who opened the Wuang Zuan, and took a look. He got the data of alcohol concentration of 55, and threw it back expressionlessly. I'm not used to drinking during the day. Crossing Chengang was not angry. He took the wine pot, opened it, drank a few sips from it, and spit out the alcohol and said, I don't treat people to drink easily. You don't know what's good. Yu Bei frowned. Old Chen, how can you talk like that? Liu Yan shook his head to show that he didn't mind. Crossing Chengang continued, I can work for you, but I have 3 requirements. Give Zhao Qi back to me. I want a studio of my own. I will not work more than 8 hours a day, and I will never work overtime. The middle-aged man made 3 requests in one breath, and then looked at Liu Yan in silence. Liu Yan looked at the bald man next to him, who is Zhao Qi. Yu Bei coughed dryly. Old Crossing's daughter. In fact, there is no blood relationship, just his adopted daughter. Old Crossing treasures her very much. Liu Yan asked indifferently, where is that person now? In the small building of Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu kept Zhao Qi by his side as a little girl to use, using her to control Old Crossing. Otherwise Old Crossing would have rebelled long ago. Yu Bei said concisely. Liu Yan said without thinking, let him go. Yu Bei lowered his voice. Captain Chigi, you have to think it through. Without Zhao Qi by his side, Old Crossing will run away in a minute. Liu Yan said in a deep voice, it doesn't matter, I'm different from Liu Zhao. I'm not afraid to return the person to him. But if he delays my business, I will also repay him. Looking at the pair of pure red eyes in the mask, Crossing Chengang's scalp was a little numb. According to his experience, the man called Chigi in front of him is a straightforward person. Just like he said, Chigi is not afraid to return the person to him. But if he runs away with his adopted daughter, or delays his business, he will not waste words. He will find him, and kill him and his daughter. Liu Yang continued, I can also agree to your other 2 requests. I only have 1 request. Complete every order of mine without compromise. Crossing Chengang nodded. Liu Yan made a gesture, and said to the Mecha Master Liu Jun, take him to see the butcher and other mechs, and try to repair them, as soon as possible. He looked at Yu Bei again. Get the green snake ready. Yukiishu's people will take it away tomorrow. That was the reward for Team 1. After seeing the parameters of the 2 mechs, the butcher and the green snake, Liu Yan decisively handed over the green snake. Compared with the green snake, the parameters of the butcher seemed more suitable for Liu Yan. The butcher is a heavy-duty mecha that focuses on strength and defense. Its material armor and supercore matrix are installed and matched for the purpose of high attack and thick defense. This is quite pleasing to Liu Yan. compared with the green snake that focuses on flexibility. Luo Yan prefers the butcher. Yu Bei nodded and then said in a deep voice, "Captain, what do you plan to do with Chenling, whether?" He made a gesture of scratching his throat. Luo Yan shook his head. Now that Liu Xiao has just been killed, it will take some time to digest the resources of Team 3. At this point in time, even if Chenling is killed and Team 4 is merged, it may not be the best choice. Luo Yan has limited energy. He cannot put all his energy into the Black Witch organization, which means that there will be many problems in merging Team 3 and Team 4 in a short period of time. And doing so will make other branch teams feel threatened, especially Yukiishu of Team 1. What will Yukiishu think when he sees that his power is expanding too fast? I'm afraid he will join forces with other captains to try to split his power and even eliminate Team 7. Of course, after I issued a warning, Chenling still chose to support Liu Xiao, so I can't just let him go back. At that moment, Luo Yan stood up and put away the ring dragon. "Let's go and meet Captain Chen." Arrived at Liu Xiao's residence, Luo Yan saw Chenling in the study. Chenling was less than 30 years old, with a white face and no beard, and a full forehead. He was also a handsome man. Even now, he looked embarrassed and fidgeted. After Xiao Teng, the captain of Team 4, died in the battle at the Mustang base, Chenling replaced Xiao Teng as the captain. However, Team 4 was seriously injured after the battle at the Mustang base. Teams 2 and 5 were even more eager to take advantage of the situation. Under such circumstances, when Chenling received Liu Xiao's invitation, he accepted the invitation of Team 3 without much consideration and came to the Silver Bay base to help. In Chenling's view, this was a good deal. But he never expected that Liu Xiao would be killed on his own territory. Even now, Chenling still felt unreal. The door opened. Chenling immediately looked up and saw a figure wearing a cloak and a wooden mask walking in. Red Ghost. Chenling suddenly became nervous. Thoughts flashed through his mind. Red Ghost? He's here after all. How is he going to deal with me? I'm also an intermediate level, and he's not in the mecha now. Otherwise, should I take him down? No, if I kill him, I can swallow Team 3 and Team 7. Kill him. In the mask, Luo Yan looked at Chenling's thoughts, especially the last two. But after a while, Chenling didn't dare to make a move. Luo Yan was even less anxious, so the two of them just stared at each other in silence. Time passed by minute. Chenling was already sweating profusely and finally heard Luo Yan say, "Why don't you make a move?" Chenling's whole body trembled and finally smiled bitterly and sat down dejectedly. He knew he had lost. Chenling, hesitated for so long whether to make a move while others were waiting for him to make a move. In other words, even if he made a move, the Red Ghost was absolutely sure to kill him. This discovery made Chenling completely lose his fighting spirit. Glancing at Chenling's thoughts at the moment, Luo Yan said calmly, "You shouldn't have participated in this matter." Liu Xiao secretly communicated with the Southern Border Organization Huangquan and used the power of outsiders to fight internal conflicts. He has been regarded as a traitor. Of course, you don't know, so I don't blame you. The organization will not regard you as a traitor. But it is a fact that you support Liu Xiao and target our Team 7, so naturally we can't just let you go back like this. Chenling was sweating profusely, and he had already cursed Liu Xiao 10,000 times in his heart. Just like Luo Yan said, if he had known that the inside story of this matter was so complicated, he would never participate. He smiled bitterly and said, "Captain Shigi, how do you think this matter should be handled?" "Ransom." Luo Yan said calmly, "Pay 50 million ransom and you can go back. If the money is not enough, use mechs or munitions instead." Chapter 361, Ground Status. After some bargaining and a comprehensive and integrated review of the current situation of Team 4, the ransom for Chenling was finally set at 45 million. Of this, Chenling paid 25 million in cash. The other 10 million was offset by a batch of weapons and equipment, which was a sophisticated equipment that could equip a team of 30 people. Chenling promised to hand it over to the Yinwen base within a week. He was temporarily unable to pay the remaining 10 million. If he took out this 10 million, Team 4 would really be so poor that he would only have underwear left. Chenling hoped that Luo Yan would let him owe it first, so that he could use this 10 million for turnover, and promised to repay it in installments within a year. Of course, this had to include interest. Luo Yan consulted Yukiishu about this situation, and the latter suggested that an internal justice be made, and Chenling's money would be transferred to Luo Yan's pocket in installments through the organization's internal account. Although this would deduct some handling fees, the advantage was that Chenling did not dare to play tricks, otherwise the organization would interfere. So Luo Yan conducted an internal justice and resolved the dispute with Team 4. This matter completely met his psychological expectations. After all, killing Chenling would not necessarily bring more benefits. Now that he had received the money, he would not put too much pressure on other branch teams. It was considered a relatively perfect handling. In the next few days, Luo Yan was very busy. He had to meet different people every day and deal with many affairs. After a few days, he finally took over Liu Zio's power in Yunwan base. Liu Zio's power in Yunwan base included a commercial street, which had various shops, from food to equipment. Every year, the shops here had to pay a portion of their profits to Liu Zio, which constituted part of the income of Team 3 in the base. Luo Yan met the big and small bosses on the street in a cursory manner, which was just a formality. The more important meetings were with the law enforcement department of the base and the leaders of several other major forces in the base. Among them was the Ranyi in the bar that day. Afterwards, Luo Yan also distributed the goods that he had robbed in the name of Liu Zio to the base and other forces at a 20% discount, thus realizing about 40 million yuan. So after this battle, Luo Yan has earned at least 60 million yuan on the books. But he can't pocket all of the 60 million yuan. After all, Team 3 had paid 50 million yuan for goods before, and it wasn't all Liu Zio's own money. 30 million yuan of that was the working capital of Team 3 at the base, so Luo Yan took out half of the income to balance the account, so that his power could operate normally at the base. In the past few days, Yu Bei played a key role, but this also made him hated by the old members of Team 3. Of course, Yu Bei himself didn't care. On this day, Luo Yan planned to return to Guangling City, so he called Baldy over. As soon as Yu Bei entered the door, he saw Luo Yan patting a box on the table. "Captain, what is this?" Luo Yan pushed the box forward. "Nano bomb, with positioning, remote detonation and other functions. In addition, my biological characteristics have been input. One side eye, it will also detonate. This is one of the few items in the Black Witch that can control subordinates. It was brought to Luo Yan by the way when Team 1 transported the Green Snake 2 days ago. Luo Yan can't stay in the Yunwan base forever. Although the personnel have been split and reorganized, and some of the personnel from Teams 3 and 7 have been disbanded and reorganized, he can't just trust Yu Bei and let the bald man take full charge of the base affairs. Necessary control can solve this problem. Luo Yan doesn't intend to conceal or deceive. Everything depends on what the bald man chooses." Yu Bei was stunned for a moment, then silently opened the box, picked up the syringe, and injected the nanobomb into his body. He rubbed the wound and grinned. "Captain Chigi is more straightforward than that guy surnamed Liu. If Liu Zio did this, he would have to make a set of tender and affectionate remarks first." Luo Yan said calmly in the wooden mask, "If you and I are both alive in 3 years, I will disarm the bomb, and it will be naturally discharged from the body." "Okay." Yu Bei continued, "But Captain, I'm afraid you can't leave now. Yunwan base is only one of the forces of the original 3rd team, but Liu Zio's real territory is in Changping City, which is the lifeblood of the 3rd team. Industry, business, and connections are almost all in Changping City. If you don't take it over now, I'm afraid these things will be eaten up by others." Luo Yan said calmly, "In my opinion, the real lifeblood of a team or an organization is never industry or business, but the armed forces in your own hands. As long as the fist is strong, even if the industry or business is eaten up by others for a while, they will eventually spit it out to me with interest." Yu Bei listened and nodded silently. That afternoon, Luo Yan left the Yunwan base. He set out alone. This way, he could move faster. He had been away from Guangling City for a while. If he didn't go back, other people would probably get suspicious. After all, Zeng was the only one in Guangling City who knew about the Black Witch organization. A few days later, Luo Yan passed by a surface city and ran out of water, so he entered the city. After entering the city, he found traces of human activities, and it was obvious that there were survivors living here. He skillfully opened a manhole cover, climbed down the shaft ladder, turned on the flashlight, and shone it around. He saw graffiti on the wall not far away, and the word Ratman was painted on it. That was probably the survivors' self-mockery of their own situation. They didn't dare to live on the ground, so they could only shrink into underground facilities or sewer networks. It did have a bit of the flavor of Ratman. Luo Yan was not unfamiliar with this kind of life. He took off his mask and put it away carefully. He pulled up his hood again, making himself look like one of the survivors. Walking along the sewer network for a while, Luo Yan gradually met some survivors. They were scattered, sitting or lying, with numbness and emptiness on everyone's face and eyes, like a walking corpse. This is the current situation on the surface. After all, only a very small number of people can live in the base or even the underground city. More people are like those Luo Yan saw now. They have lost confidence in the future and can't see hope. They can only live one day at a time, letting despair gradually eat away at their body and mind. Luo Yan knew that the survivors on the surface were also divided into different levels. This is due to the sociality and class nature of human beings. Those who live in the sewer network are usually the weakest group of survivors. Just like him in the past, infected with red poison, weak and powerless, and can only live in the sewer network. The stronger survivors with certain power usually occupy places such as subways, underground shopping malls, and underground parking garages. And they will gather people to form small territories and make their own rules, just like local emperors. Usually, only these people and these forces can get clean drinking water. Chapter 362. Good people don't live long. After a while, Luo Yan found an underground mall. At the entrance, Luo Yan saw a pattern. It was a bloody claw, which looked bloody and was stained with fur. It was probably painted with the blood of some animal. It was actually very irrational to do this. The smell of blood might attract giant parasites. Those who dared to do this were either fools or lunatics, or people who were confident in their own strength. Luo Yan didn't know what kind of owner this underground mall belonged to. He just wanted to replenish supplies and leave after one night. He was stopped at the entrance of the mall without any surprise, but after handing into cold medicines as a ticket, Luo Yan was able to enter the underground mall. The underground mall has been renovated, and there seem to be hundreds of people living here. The cleaned out mall has many tents, large and small, colorful, and scattered around the mall. The mall is very lively. Shouting, scolding, and hawking are all over the place. In some tents with ambiguous colors, the most primitive sounds can also be heard. Luo Yan didn't rush into the mall. He paused for a moment at the diagram on the wall at the entrance. The diagram showed that the underground mall was divided into 3 floors, 2 of which were shopping malls, and the bottom floor was a garage. The first floor was for receiving outsiders, and the second and third floors were marked with a big red cross, which was obviously not a place for outsiders to go. Luo Yan didn't plan to visit the owner of this underground mall, so he tightened his hood and went into the mall in a low-key manner. There were many small stalls on the first floor of the underground mall, and the items sold were also varied. There was even a tent dedicated to those taboos. From time to time, the crying of young girls could be heard from inside. Luo Yan didn't go into it. After the giant beast disaster, the order on the surface had collapsed long ago. The darkness of human nature was infinitely magnified, but in the midst of suffering, there were also seeds of glory that stubbornly grew. While strolling around, he gained some information through conversations between survivors. This underground mall belonged to the Blood Claw organization, and the leader of the Blood Claw had a rather vulgar name, Gao Fugi. But Gao Fugi and his men had more than 10 guns and some grenades. This little power was disdained by any underground organization in the dungeon. But on the surface, in the survivors' settlement, they were gods, able to control the lives of many people. What Luo Yan heard most from the survivors was that Gao Fugi had a hobby and liked girls aged 14 or 15. So looking at the entire first floor of the mall, there were almost no girls of this age. because they were either in the underground garage or didn't dare to step into the mall at all. After a while, Luo Yan finally found a tent selling drinking water. After throwing away a box of cold granules, he had a canteen on him and 2 empty bottles filled with water. Next, Luo Yan found a quiet place in the corner of the mall to sit down, planning to spend the night here and leave tomorrow. Not long after he sat down, the light in front of him dimmed, and when he looked up, 2 men were looking at him with a smirk on their faces. "Boy, I don't want to make things difficult for you. Give me all the water and medicine you have, and I promise no one will bother you tonight. Otherwise, I will stab it into your heart and take what I want from your body." One of the men gestured with a saber in his hand. Luo Yan's hand in the cloak touched the handle of the Huan Long, but he didn't unsheath it. Then he heard a strong voice shouting, "Yan He, what are you doing?" Luo Yan raised his head in the hood and saw that the man named Yan He and his companions separated to the left and right, revealing 2 figures behind. The 2 people, one was a strong middle-aged man, and the other was wearing a cloak like Luo Yan, hiding behind the middle-aged man. It was unknown whether he was a man or a woman, old or young. The man named Yan He frowned and said, "Yang Zeng, this has nothing to do with you. I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." The middle-aged man named Yang Zeng snorted and said, "Nowadays, life is not easy for everyone. It's fine if you don't help, but you are taking advantage of the situation. I, Yang Zeng, just can't stand it. Either you get out of here, or I'll play with you." Yan He spat. "Mr. Yang, what are you so proud of as a retired soldier?" He glared at Luo Yan fiercely and whispered, "Let's go." They passed by Yang Zeng and the other man. Yan He glanced at the man in the cloak and his eyes moved slightly. After they left, the man named Yang Zeng raised his voice and said, "Brother, are you okay? Don't stay alone. You'll be bullied easily if you stay alone." After saying that, he pulled the people around him and turned to leave. But at this time, the man in the cloak looked back at Luo Yan. Then he ran back, stretched out a delicate little hand from his cloak, and put a simply packaged bread on the ground. Luo Yan saw a beautiful face in the cloak. Although she had messy short hair like a boy, it was still clear that she was a girl of 14 or 15 years old. The 2 people, who were not sure whether they were father and daughter or of some other relationship, left. Looking at the bread on the ground, Luo Yan's hand loosened from the handle of the Huan Long knife. He picked up the bread and felt surprised. In the 3 years on the surface, people like Yang Zeng who like to meddle in other people's business are almost gone. After all, people like this don't live long. In troubled times, good people don't live long. Luo Yan tore open the outer packaging, bit the hardened bread, and ate it bite by bite. When the surface was illuminated by the moonlight and the roar of the giant beast was faintly heard. In the camp of Bloodclaw, Luo Yan opened his eyes, and his red eyes reflected the firelight and human figures. Yan He is back again, and this time he brought 3 or 4 people. "Hey, you're awake. Boy, if you're smart, take out your stuff. No one can protect you now. Besides, the guy surnamed Yang is probably in trouble now. Hey, I was wondering why this guy always buys women's things. So he has a daughter. He hid it very well. If I hadn't bumped into her today, I wouldn't have known." Luo Yan's eyes moved slightly, and he said the first sentence. After arriving at the Bloodclaw camp, "What happened to Yang Zeng?" Yan He squatted down, and without any scruples, he reached out to search Luo Yan's things, and said as he searched, "It's none of your business." Clang. The cold light broke through the cloak. Yan He's arm that was stretched to Luo Yan flew out. The man was startled, and then screamed. Suddenly his shoulders sank. A sharp long knife pressed against the aorta in his neck. Yan He couldn't scream on the spot. Luo Yan said word by word, "What happened to Yang Zeng?" Yan He shuddered, not daring to hide it. "Boss Gao likes those kind of pretty girls. I told the chief steward Zhaoming of the Bloodclaw camp about Yang Zeng's daughter. Chief Steward Zhaoming has asked a team to go to Yang Zeng's house and bring his daughter over." Luo Yan said oh, and the ring dragon slashed across Yan He's neck and then pushed the man who was covering his neck away. Luo Yan stood up, his shadow stretched in the firelight and turned into a demonic shadow. He looked at the bread packaging at his feet, raised the long knife, and pointed it at the other man. "Take me to Yang Zeng's house." Chapter 363 Kindness and Bread. Blood Claw Camp, the third floor of the underground mall. In a remodeled room in the garage, the girl was thrown to the ground like a cargo, with a slightly red pupil and a hollow look, as if she was dead. Until then, some fragments still flashed through her mind. The door of her home was forcibly broken. The father who threw down the food and rushed over immediately. The spurting blood mist, the psychedelic lights, the deafening gunshots, and Yang Tao, run. Those were the last words the father shouted in his life, while covering his abdomen. Someone else walked into the room. A middle-aged man in his 50s, with a square face, bald head, and wearing gold and silver. Xiao Zhao, is this the surprise you mentioned? A horse-faced man poked out from behind and smiled flatteringly. That's right, Master Gao. This little thing is so tender, I thought Master Gao might like it, so I brought it to you. Master Gao was Gao Fugi. Although he was not young, he had a body of tendons. Every night, he was happy without women, and he was proud of it. Gao Fugi glanced at her and smiled. You are really filial. Go to the warehouse, and take whatever you like. After the housekeeper's arming went down happily, Gao Fugi glanced at the girl on the ground, walked around twice and said, you deliberately cut your hair so short and messy, for fear that people would find out that you are a girl. You are a little thinner, but you still have meat where you should be. Not bad. Girl, I'm Gao Fugi. You follow me, you will be blessed. At least you won't have to worry about food and clothes in the future. He laughed and undressed, but unexpectedly, when his pants were half taken off, he suddenly heard shouting and screaming outside. Then the sound of gunfire and grenade explosions sounded one after another. Gao Fugi was stunned for a moment, put his clothes back on in a few seconds, and suddenly opened the door. What's going on? The guards at the door were also confused, not knowing what was going on. At this time, footsteps were heard, and a figure suddenly ran out from the corner of the passage in front. It was the housekeeper Xiaoming. Xiaoming covered his head, his horse face was dirty, and he ran while shouting, it's not good, Master Gao. Someone is coming to kill us. Our people can't hold on. Gao Fugi immediately pulled out a pistol. How many people are coming? Xiaoming made a bitter face and raised a finger. One person. Just one. Gao Fugi thought he had heard it wrong, but at this moment, another subordinate at the corner of the passage in front of him fired and retreated, as if he was trying his best to stop someone. Suddenly, a distorted invisible ripple flashed by, and Gao Fugi could see clearly that his subordinate, including the man and the gun, was broken into two parts. Suddenly, the two guards at the door looked at Gao Fugi nervously. Gao Fugi shouted, why are you looking at me? Go ahead. Footsteps sounded. At this time, Gao Fugi saw that a figure walked in. This figure was not very tall, wearing a tattered cloak, and pulling the hood. Under the hat was slightly messy black hair, a pair of blood-red eyes, and tightly pursed lips, exuding a cold and sharp meaning. Gao Fugi's two men had already opened fire, but the bullets were blocked by an invisible barrier. Then the light in front of the man condensed and turned into a wolf beast, which pounced on him and knocked down the two men in a few moves. Gao Fugi suddenly pulled Xiaoming next to him over and blocked him in front of him. With his other hand, he picked up a pistol and kept shooting. The cloak was lifted up, and an invisible ripple broke out from the flying cloak, instantly passing through the bodies of Gao Fugi and Xiaoming. Gao Fugi opened his eyes wide and saw the pistol split in the middle, followed by his arm. After the ripple passed, half of Gao Fugi's arm was cut off. He screamed and stepped back and sat on the ground, watching the cloaked man slowly approaching. Gao Fugi finally couldn't help but shout, who are you? I don't know you at all. Why did you destroy my foundation? Gao Fugi really couldn't figure it out. He hadn't offended the man in front of him, so why did he want to kill his camp and even kill him? Then he heard the man utter two words, Yang Zeng. Gao Fugi was stunned and looked at a loss, but he saw that the housekeeper Xiaoming, who also lost an arm, changed his face. Gao Fugi immediately asked, who is Yang Zeng? Xiaoming's teeth were trembling, and he didn't dare to hide it. He looked into the room and said, it's the father of the girl. Gao Fugi seemed to have guessed something and asked, where is Yang Zeng? Xiaoming lowered his head and didn't dare to look at Gao Fugi. Dead. We didn't want to kill anyone, but he refused to hand over his daughter, so I had to. Bastard. Gao Fugi didn't know where the ruthlessness came from. He jumped up, picked up a pistol next to him, and shot Zhao Ming a few times. Then he said to the cloaked man in front of him, "Brother, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. I didn't know that this bastard did such a heinous thing behind my back. Ignorance is not a crime, so you can't blame me for this." But the cloaked man didn't stop at all. "Your dog bit someone. You can't just say I didn't know and pretend nothing happened. What's more, it bit someone to death." Gao Fugi sweated like rain. "Brother, what Yang Zeng can give you, I will give you double, triple." The cloaked man said calmly, "You can't give me what he gave me." Gao Fugi was stunned and asked, "What did Yang Zeng give you?" "A piece of kindness and a piece of bread." Gao Fugi suddenly felt that the whole thing was too absurd. Kindness? Bread? Is this valuable in troubled times? Question mark? Am I going to lose my life because of a piece of kindness and a piece of bread? I can't understand. Gao Fugi shouted, "I will give you all my money and food. I have enough food for a year in my warehouse and countless bread." The figure turned a deaf ear. Gao Fugi suddenly remembered that Yang Zeng's daughter was still lying in the room, so he ran into the room and rushed to the girl who had heard the sound and sat up. Gao Fugi grabbed her with one hand, thinking that as long as he caught this girl in his hand, he could win bargaining chips. Whoosh! A cold light flashed in the room. Gao Fugi screamed and fell to the ground, and his thigh was pierced by a long and thin blade. The girl on the ground was startled and stepped back quickly. Then she saw someone walking in from outside the door. Cloak, hood, black hair, red eyes, exclamation mark. The girl was stunned. Wasn't that the survivor who she gave food to on the first floor of the mall in the evening? Then she heard the red-eyed man say, "You are still alive. So, do you want revenge?" The girl looked at Gao Fugi and heard the man say, "This man's surname is Gao. I think you should know who he is." "Yes, his name is Gao Fugi. The person who broke into your house, killed your father, and brought you here is his dog." Bang! A pistol was thrown in front of the girl. The girl looked up and heard the man say, "When I got there, Yang Zeng was already dead. I didn't save him. Now all I can do is give you a chance to get revenge. Just think of it as paying back the money for the bread." Chapter 364. The election ends. After looking at the girl on the ground, Luo Yan didn't wait for her to express her opinion. He flashed his long knife several times, cut Gao Fugi's tendons, and walked out of the house. After he went to Yang Zeng's house, he found that Yang Zeng was dead, but he didn't find the girl's body in the house. So he guessed that the girl was brought to the Blood Claw camp. After returning to the underground mall, Luo Yan asked someone and confirmed that Yang Zeng's daughter was brought back. Then he killed his way in. Luo Yan didn't need Yang Zeng's meddling and the girl's bread, but he didn't refuse at that time, which was acceptance for him. In other words, Luo Yan accepted a favor from Yang Zeng's family. What he did now was to return this favor. That way, both sides would be even. As for whether the girl inside could finally kill him, Luo Yan didn't care. Everyone met by chance, and it was enough for them to do what they thought they should do. Next, Luo Yan planned to escort the girl to other surface cities or bases. If she stayed here, she would be retaliated by the remnants of the Blood Claw camp. After all, Luo Yan had just fought his way in, and those who ran away, he was in no mood to chase and kill them. But these people might cause trouble for the girl later. Send the Buddha to the west. Luo Yan would not do half-hearted things. Since he was involved, he would take care of it to the end. Just a few seconds later, gunshots were heard in the house. After a while, the girl came out. Luo Yan glanced at her, took off his cloak, and threw it to her. "Put it on. I'll take you away." The girl held the cloak, feeling the warmth on it, bit her lip, raised her head, and looked at Luo Yan. "Can I learn the skills of killing from you?" Luo Yan didn't ask her why she wanted to learn, but said, "The tuition fee for learning from me is very expensive." The girl clenched her fists. "How expensive?" Luo Yan said in a deep voice, "As expensive as your life." In other words, if you want to learn the skills of killing from him, you have to sell your life to Luo Yan. The girl was not a dull person. She understood immediately and nodded decisively. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to take revenge tonight. I might even lose my life. So, teacher, From today on, Yang Tao's life is yours. Luo Yan glanced at her and said, let's go. Your father's funeral has not been handled yet. After handling Yang Zheng's funeral, Luo Yan took the girl named Yang Tao back to Guangling. Using some unofficial channels, Luo Yan easily led the girl into the underground city. Seeing this city under the ground, Yang Tao's expression was exactly the same as Luo Yan's at the beginning. Because he was with Yang Tao, Luo Yan had to go back to the Red Gate first. Hearing that Luo Yan was back, the fake Taoist Wenzhou hurried back and met Luo Yan in the quiet room of Jude building. Master, you are finally back. After Wenzhou finished speaking, he saw a girl of about 14 or 15 years old hiding behind Luo Yan and couldn't help but exclaimed in his heart. Luo Yan took the girl's hand and let her walk out. Then he said, this is Yang Tao, find a place for her to stay. Wenzhou asked cautiously, who is Miss Yang? My student. Luo Yan did not hide it. Wenzhou immediately smiled and said, hello, Miss Yang. I'm Wenzhou. If you need anything in the future, please tell me. Yang Tao was frightened by the enthusiasm of the fake Taoist priest. She took 2 steps back and looked at the masked teacher. All kinds of thoughts flashed through the girl's mind. She did not expect that Luo Yan, the teacher, would bring her to an underground city. She did not expect that her teacher seemed to be an extraordinary person. Luo Yan's eyes were cold and said, let someone take her down to bathe and change clothes first, and then prepare some food for her. Wenzhou did as he was told. After Yang Tao went down, Wenzhou asked tentatively, Master, how about letting Lei Qi's 2 women serve Miss Yang Tao? No need. Luo Yan shook his head. She is not a rich lady. Why does she need to be so comfortable? But, when I'm not here, you have to ensure her safety. Not even a hair can be missing. Wenzhou hurriedly said, I know. Luo Yan said again, also, find a doctor to regulate her body, and you can teach her some basic exercises to strengthen her body. I will do the rest myself. Wenzhou nodded repeatedly. Originally, he thought that the student was fake and the lover was real. Now it seems that this is really Luo Yan's student. The fake Taoist was curious, how could Captain Chigi take a student back when he went out? He also told Wenzhou to wait for Guanpeng to come back and tell him something, and then Luo Yan returned to the academy. The next day, when Luo Yan walked into the classroom, he was still worried that someone would ask him where he had been these days. He even prepared an excuse. In the end, he found that he was worrying too much. He walked into the classroom and attracted no attention at all. The classmates gathered in groups of 3 or 4, discussing something enthusiastically. Luo Yan quietly sat down in his seat and listened carefully for a while, only to find out that the City Lord election yesterday had been settled. Speaking of it, the City Lord election was full of variables from the beginning to the end. First, the Luo family exploded at the beginning, and the votes were always left behind. Then Huang Yuanhang was also removed from the horse and disqualified from the election. When everyone thought that Wu Shimo, the dark horse, was going to be elected, the Luo family successfully cleaned up and made a comeback. But before Luo Xianyi could make a move, he ran into the Forbidden Land mutation, which led to the suspension of the City Lord election. As a result, the Forbidden Land incident ended, and Zheng was immediately concerned and supported by the people, because he tried his best to prevent the Forbidden Land from evolving into a GD, and fought the Overlord Beast alone. In the end, he won the City Lord crown with an absolute advantage, and became the new City Lord of Guangling City. This matter has twists and turns, the process is tortuous and dramatic, and naturally, it is highly discussed. As a result, the return of Luo Yan, the missing person, did not attract much attention. It was not until Zheng Shan finished his discussion with Li Boheng excitedly that he discovered Luo Yan and ran over. Old Luo, where have you been these days? The election of the City Lord is over, and Captain Zheng was elected. By the way, I heard that your mecha has been sent to the core headquarters. It's a regular level of the Divine Guard. When will you take us to broaden our horizons? After hearing Zheng Shan talk about the mecha, Luo Yan remembered that the divine weapon Dragon Elephant that he reported before leaving should also be issued. In this case, he can find a time to go to the core and collect all the things. No, it would be more appropriate to let the core send the mecha over. That way, the mecha can be upgraded first. In addition, use the contribution points to exchange some cultivation agent with the giant beast strategic house to speed up the progress of cultivation. He got 100,000 contribution points from the previous Deathgate evil. He has already spent 5,000 points to exchange for a bottle of marrow washing agent, and now there are still many contribution points left. It should be possible to exchange some. While Luo Yan was calculating, Li Boheng, who was wearing glasses and looked gentle, smiled and said, "Student Luo, soon, we will be able to fight side by side again." Luo Yan looked at him puzzledly. Li Boheng pushed his glasses and smiled. "The sports meeting will be held soon. This sports meeting is jointly organized by all the mecha academies in the 18 cities in the north. It is a grand event held every 3 years. By then, we freshmen will also participate. Then, we can fight side by side again." Chapter 365, Transformed into a Human. Luo Yan had heard about the sports meet when he was an exchange student during the summer vacation, but he never thought it would come so soon. Li Boheng knew that Luo Yan didn't know much about the sports meet and smiled and said, "The Mecha Academy sports meet is held every 3 years, and this year is not the first time it's been held. In fact, the Mecha Academy already existed before the underground city was built and put into use. I heard from my uncle that not long after the discovery of Gixu, various countries began to secretly establish Mecha Academies. Before the giant beast disaster, there were 27 Mecha Academies in our country, 18 schools in the north and 9 academies in the south, a total of 27. Every 3 years, a national Mecha Academy sports meet will be held. Of course, it was held in secret before the disaster. Now, with the disaster breaking out and the surface in chaos, it is naturally impossible to hold a national sports meet. In fact, even if the 18 schools in the north jointly host a sports meet, it is hard to say whether all 18 academies will be able to arrive at that time." Zheng Shan sighed. "Even if they don't arrive, how many students will participate in this event jointly held by more than a dozen colleges?" Luo Yan asked, "What are the events in the sports meet?" Since it is a sports meet for the Mecha Academy, it should not be simple events such as track and field and swimming. Generally speaking, it can be divided into 2 categories, Mecha Application and Student Combat Capability Assessment. Each category is further divided into groups and individuals, and both groups and individuals have many projects. Among them, the actual combat in the forbidden area is the most important part. Li Boheng talked freely. In addition, for the sake of fairness, the conference is also divided into 3 groups, namely, 3rd grade, 2nd grade and 1st grade. Among them, the actual combat of the 3rd grade group is said to be carried out in the desperate battlefield. Of course, it is only on the edge of the battlefield. The purpose is to let students feel the atmosphere in advance. That actual combat is also called the graduation ceremony of the 3rd grade. Luo Yan's breathing was slightly heavy. Desperate battlefield. At that time, Dr. Jia Mao said that the desperate battlefield was formed by 2 or more GD overlapping and bordering each other. There are only 5 desperate battlefields in the world. One of them is on the land where they live. What kind of battlefield is it, and how bad it must be to be named desperate? Luo Yan had the urge to enter the battlefield to find out, but unfortunately only 3rd graders can go to the desperate battlefield, and he has to wait another 2 years. At this time, Xiaoshi came, cleared his throat, and said with a smile, "Students, class is about to start." Li Boheng, Zheng Shan and others hurried back to their seats, and 2 rabbit ears popped out of the classroom door, and then the late Bei poked his head out. Today the girl was still wearing a hat from the Hobbit Rabbit series, but today the rabbit hat was in the shape of a pirate, which made Bei, who was wearing an eye mask, look quirky. Xiaoshi smiled and waved at her, and Bei stuck out his tongue and sat down next to Luo Yan like a rabbit. After the students quieted down, Xiaoshi took the chalk and quickly wrote a few big words on the blackboard. Nightmare Behemoth. He put down the chalk, smiled and looked around the classroom, scanning the young faces. "I told you about the Overlord Behemoth last time. Today, I will tell you about the so-called Nightmare level. So far, the highest level of Behemoths that we humans have known about is the Nightmare level. As for whether there are other levels above the nightmare level, and how many there are, it is unknown. Jiuying pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, "We have said before that the Overlord Behemoth has a super anti-membrane that can show the beast soul and use strange arts. These are the marks and characteristics of the Overlord Behemoth. The Nightmare Behemoth has gone a step further. Their super anti-membrane covers an amazing range and can easily cover an area. As for the beast soul, the Nightmare Behemoth no longer simply shows this essence. Their essence has been further sublimated, allowing them to undergo some changes when necessary." Luoyan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the instructor on the podium intently. Jiuying took a sip of water from the cup with wolf berries in it to moisten his throat before continuing. "We mentioned before that the giant beasts can practice and evolve just like us humans. The changes of the nightmare giant beasts are the result of practice and evolution. Their changes give them more characteristics similar to humans. Some have human faces and beast bodies, some have beast heads and human bodies, and so on." Jiuying didn't know what he was thinking of. After a long pause, he said, "Things like these with human faces and beast bodies, or beast heads and human bodies, were not discovered in Gixu before the giant beasts appeared. There are similar legends all over the world, such as Anubis with a dog's head and a human body, or those strange creatures in the classic of mountains and seas. So scholars who study Gixu generally believe that it is very likely that in ancient times, the Yama space was once opened, and the giant beasts appeared. These things are deeply imprinted in human memory, in our genes, passed down from generation to generation, and evolved into legends." These words made the students think about it and sigh. After a dry cough, Jiuying smiled and said, "Let's get back to the topic. The changes that nightmare behemoths display, with a lot of human characteristics, we call it transformation into a human, or humanized form. When they undergo this transformation, they become more dangerous, and truly become mankind's nightmare. In this form, nightmare behemoths can use a trace of Yin-Sha power. By mixing in this trace of Yin-Sha power, not only can they use supernatural arts, but the scale, depth, and power of the supernatural arts are not comparable to those of the Overlord Behemoths. That kind of supernatural art is called curse. Now let's take a look at whether the Behemoths, starting from the Overlord level, have the feeling of a monster cultivating into a human in ancient novels. This is especially true for the humanized form of the Nightmare Behemoth. So, if there is a class above the Nightmare Behemoths, then the behemoths of this class may have completely abandoned their beastly posture and transformed into humans. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. In a laboratory, Lin Wei stepped away from the microscope and rubbed her brows with a slightly tired look. Suddenly, footsteps were heard, and then someone ran into the laboratory and said, "Jiuying, Dr. Jiuying wants to see you. She is on line 3. Lin Wei raised her head and nodded slightly, then picked up the phone next to her and switched to line 3. "Teacher?" Jiuying's voice sounded from the other end of the phone. "Jiuying, I have deciphered it. Item A, item 346, deciphered successfully. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 366, Heavenly Ghost. The so-called item A346 refers to the items found in Gixu. The Giant Beast Strategic Bureau will evaluate and number the items unearthed in Gixu. According to the value and importance, the 10 heavenly stems are used to grade them, from high to low. They are A, B, C, D, E, G, G, S, R, G, and GUI. Later, in the process of research, the classification of the items will be adjusted accordingly. When the items are thoroughly studied, they will be graded to determine their final value. Now, item A346 has been completely deciphered, which means that it will be graded soon. But Lin Wei doesn't care about this, she cares about the deciphered content. Item A346 is a stone tablet found in Gixu. It is stored in a dangerous place. Jiuying believes that it records some secrets in the Yama space. Since it was unearthed, she has been using a decryption system she wrote to decipher it. Lin Wei remembered that this item had already existed when she became Jiuying Mao's student, but it was not until today that Jiuying Mao announced that it had been deciphered. At the moment, although she was indifferent, she could not hide her excitement in her eyes. "Teacher, what is the result?" Jiuying Mao's voice was also slightly excited. "It is basically certain that there is a higher level above the nightmare beast. That level is called Sky Ghost. I have sent the specific translation to you, and the password is still the original set. Take a look. I'm going to the strategic mansion now. It is time to update the giant beast archive." After hanging up the phone, Lin Wei came to the computer, and sure enough, there was a prompt on the screen that a new email had been received. Lin Wei opened the mailbox, entered the password, and downloaded the file. The file was a picture with a few lines of text on it. The text was, "In ancient times, there were survivors who used as wine, liquor, and rice to sacrifice to the Sky Ghost. The Sky Ghost is a transformation of a spirit beast, as small as a mustard seed and as large as Mount Sumeru, and it changes constantly. The crowd of heavenly ghosts, including the thieves on the main road, are led by the servants of the demons, causing chaos in the beginning of the world, and becoming the enemy of the lost world." The next day, Luo Yan had just finished class when he heard someone outside the classroom door asking, "Excuse me, is Luo Yan in this class?" Then a student pointed at Luo Yan. Luo Yan came out of the classroom, and a man in a blue uniform who looked like a staff member of a logistics company handed him a tablet. "Hello, Luo, I'm Zhao Jiuo from the logistics department of Guanglin Corps. According to your meaning, your mecha has been delivered to the academy and entered the upgrade warehouse. In addition, your magic weapon has also been issued, delivered together with the mecha. Please sign the receipt inside." As he was talking, two more people came over carrying a box. The box seemed to be quite heavy. The two people were wearing a set of special equipment, semi-covered armor, small hydraulic equipment, and flashing battery cells, all of which showed a sense of technology. Luo Yan's eyes fell on the equipment, and he said with some surprise, "What is this?" "Civilian exoskeleton armor." Zhao Jiuo said, "It has just been put into use, and is currently in the trial stage. If nothing unexpected happens, the same type of armor for individual combat should be launched soon. By then, at least ordinary soldiers will have a good performance in dealing with giant parasites." Bang! The heavy box was placed on the ground, attracting many students to watch. Zhao Jiuo entered the password and opened the box. On the box was a black long sword and a scabbard for storage. Divine weapon, dragon elephant. It is made of the special iron Changlao stone produced in Gixu. It is incredibly heavy and has a suppressive effect when attacking. As Zhao Jiuo explained, the first year students looked into the box with envy and curiosity. They saw the sword lying in the box. It was pitch black and was in the shape of an 8-sided Han sword. The sword body was straight, upright and majestic. The dragon elephant is 1.3 meters long and 3 fingers wide. The blade is sharp and the demeanor is solemn. There are 8 small characters engraved on the sword. The posture of the dragon and the elephant, fish and birds are frightened. Although this sword does not have the cold and bright light of ordinary sharp blades due to its material, it has a fierce meaning. Luo Yan tried to pick up the dragon elephant, but he felt that it was heavy and almost difficult to hold without using Yuanli. At that moment, his red eyes widened, and a few dragon scales appeared slightly on his back. Only then did he easily lift it without using Yuanli. Then he waved it casually, sweeping out a fierce sword wind and making the light in the space covered by the sword wind slightly dim, and the dust in that space was pressed down together, as if suppressed by an invisible force field. Zheng Shan's eyes lit up and tried to ask, "Old Luo, can you let me play with it?" Luo Yan said nothing, but turned the hilt upside down and handed it to Zheng Shan. Zheng Shan did not dare to be arrogant and took it with both hands. However, the moment Luo Yan let go of his hand, the burly young man's face suddenly turned red. He shouted loudly and used his energy to lift it up. "This thing is really heavy. Old Luo, you can actually use it with one hand. You are too abnormal." Zheng Shan finished speaking, and he could not turn around in one breath, and pointed the heavy sword at the ground. The ground was like paper, and was pierced silently by the dragon elephant. The Han sword penetrated the ground more than an inch, causing everyone around to gasp. Luo Yan took it and put the sword back into the box. After signing the electronic receipt, Luo Yan went to the mecha upgrade warehouse again. Yesterday, when he learned that his mecha had been issued, he contacted the core and asked them to send it to the academy to see if the performance level of the mecha could be improved. The 3 levels of the mecha, primary, intermediate and advanced, are not divided too detailed. But after the God Guard level, each level of the mecha is further divided into entry level, regular level, advanced level, elite level and peak level. No matter how much the Divine Guard level is upgraded, it is impossible to become a Divine General. However, it would be good if the regular level could be upgraded a little. Hearing that Luo Yan was going to upgrade his mecha, almost all the first year students followed to watch the fun and broaden their horizons. Especially the latter. These students have hardly seen even advanced mechs, let alone Divine Guard level ones. So dozens of people all rushed to the mecha warehouse. In the mecha warehouse, instructor Ziguang was leading a group of students to watch a white mecha. The main color of this mecha is silver white, but it is distributed with black tiger stripes. If you look closely, it is not difficult to find that the outer armor also has a scaly appearance, which is very strange. By a conventional level of Divine Guard, Ziguang was explaining the parameters of the mecha to the students. He recited it by heart. Model, secret. Height 89.23 meters. Weight 1712 tons. Operating system is Yinglang 2nd generation. Main engine Dragonfire. 4 auxiliary engines. 8 main and auxiliary jets. The outer armor is Ming's Neg scale armor, which has the characteristics of high defense and high temperature resistance. The supernuclear matrix adopts the TOT core triple mount, which has the characteristics of energy absorption and stealth. The weapons include a backpack machine gun, a heavy-duty longsword Fian, and a heavy-duty shield Tation. Take a good look at them all. This is the highest specification mecha ever stored in our college warehouse. Chapter 367, School Management. After Ziguang left, the students circled around the mecha Bayan, watching and discussing it. This is a conventional Divine Guard class machine. I had only seen it in textbooks before. I didn't expect to see it with my own eyes before graduation. I have no regrets in death. No regrets in death. Can you broaden your horizons a little bit and open your mind a little bit? You have no regrets in death after seeing a Divine Guard class machine. If you could see a Divine General class machine, you would crawl out of your coffin. Cool. To cool. Apart from the word cool, I don't know how to express the complicated feelings in my heart at the moment. So you should read more books in your daily life. This mecha is said to belong to a first year student named Luo Yan. I'm so envious that he can drive a Divine Guard class machine in his first year. Look at me, I don't even have mecha. It's really frustrating to compare myself with others. You don't even see how he got this Divine Guard. To be honest, I'm not envious at all. Hey, why are there so many people here? It seems that they are all young. At this time, Luo Yan walked in and saw Bayan at first sight. Seeing that the machine gun, longsword, and shield of this mecha were all transferred from the White Dragon, he suddenly had an inexplicable feeling, as if the White Dragon was reborn in some way. Luo Yan took a deep breath and then found Ziguang the instructor, who was bald but stubbornly covered his head with a few strands of hair, said with a smile, "Student Luo, come and see your mecha." Luo Yan nodded and asked, "Teacher Z, can this mecha be upgraded?" Ziguang was stunned for a moment, then nodded, "Of course. The simplest way is to replace the machine gun, longsword and shield with divine weapon level 1s, and this mecha can immediately be upgraded by 1 or 2 levels. But I don't think there is any need to rush to upgrade." Luo Yan cast an inquiring look. Ziguang looked at the mecha and said, "You have never used it once, and you don't know its performance at all. How can you confirm your upgrade direction? If you want to upgrade, wait until you have used it for a while and understand its performance before making plans." Luo Yan believed in Ziguang judgment and nodded in agreement. At the other end of the warehouse, Zheng Shan and others had joined the ranks of those who expressed their feelings. Some even asked Luo Yan to try the mecha to let everyone learn more. A day passed like this. In the evening, Luo Yan received a message from Wenzhou that Guan Peng had returned, so he transformed into a red ghost and came to Jude building. Wenzhou sent someone to find Guan Peng. While the leader of the Iron Horse Corps had not arrived yet, the fake Taoist priest reported to Luo Yan the recent changes in the Red Gate. Master, we have completely taken over the assets of the Jiuying group, which include 10 million in working capital, a commercial building in the city center, and the original industries of several organizations in Nanfengtang. The total assets are conservatively estimated to be between 40 million and 50 million. Because the Jiuying group had absorbed several organizations before we took over. Now half of the underground world in Guangling City can be said to be controlled by us, the Red Gate. There are currently 2 organizations worth noting. One is the Black Owl. They are involved in many illegal transactions, and the most profitable of them is stimulants. The other is the Dark Blood. They are mainly engaged in the sale of arms and mecha parts. Especially the latter, the Dark Blood obtains important core components of mechs, such as energy furnaces or engines, through various channels, and then disassembles them, transports them out of the city, and finally completes the assembly on the surface, and sells them to forces in need. The most exaggerated time was when they disassembled a mecha and reassembled it on the surface. This shows that they have enough professional personnel, even mecha engineers, otherwise it would be difficult to conduct such a transaction. Luo Yan was surprised. He didn't expect that there would be such a great trade in Guangling City, and there would be such talents in the underground world. At this time, the fake Taoist priest said excitedly, Master, if we swallow up Black Owl and Dark Blood, then the underground world of Guangling will be controlled by us Red Gate. No hurry. Luo Yan said hoarsely behind the mask, we have expanded very quickly. Now is not the time to expand. Instead, we should digest internally and build our foundation in various channels. Subdivide and refine our personnel, develop armed forces, recruit talents, and strengthen them. At the same time, eliminate those useless industries, livelihoods, and even termites. Use 2 to 3 years to lay a good foundation for Red Gate, and then consider annexation and expansion. Wenzhou looked at Luo Yan in surprise. He originally thought that Red Ghost had achieved such success at such a young age. He thought that he should continue to expand and grow. He never thought that this man could restrain himself, stop expanding, and choose to lay a good foundation first. At this time, a voice came from behind the wooden mask. How is Yang Tao's condition? Wenzhou hurriedly reported, I found a doctor these 2 days to treat Miss Yang, and taught her a set of exercises to nourish her body. Miss Yang's complexion is much better than before. Luo Yan nodded slightly and asked again, do you know where to get a fresh corpse? Wenzhou was surprised and said, Master, what do you want the corpse for? Luo Yan said simply, for teaching. Wenzhou's scalp was a little cold. He had never heard of any teaching that required the use of corpses. But he still said, if you need it, I can go and find it. It shouldn't be difficult. There are many underground hospitals in Nanfengtang. Those who can't see Guan can't go to regular hospitals in the city. They can only see doctors in underground hospitals. Of course, there are many who are seriously injured and cannot be cured. The corpses are kept by these hospitals and then sold to medical schools or used for other purposes. Master wants fresh corpses. I should be able to get them. Luo Yan nodded. At this time, Guan Peng came, and Wenzhou took his leave. After the door was closed, Guan Peng asked directly, Mr. Chigi, what do you want to talk to me about? Luo Yan invited him to take a seat, and then said, I want to run a school, to teach some people how to drive a mecha. What suggestions do you have, Mr. Guan? Guan Peng was really stunned, and then said, if you want to run a school, you can't do without a mentor. Secondly, you need at least a simulated cockpit. Thirdly, you need a mecha for actual operation. He went on, Mr. Chigi, it's not a small amount of money to set up this. Luo Yan nodded, I have a mecha, but I lack a mentor and a simulated cockpit. As for the money, I think it should be no problem. Guan Peng thought for a while and said, if you really want to invest in this area, I can think of a way. I can find you a mentor who can help you get a simulated cockpit. Chapter 368 Lesson 1. Luo Yan did not come up with this idea on a whim, but had been considering it for a while. The 7 teams he controlled were short of mecha operators, even though there were only 3 mecha operators now, and all of them were piloted by mecha operators. But if we consider the long term, if we want to develop in the Black Wizard, it is obvious that the current mecha operators are not enough. Looking at the Black Wizard organization, taking the Xuanming branch as an example, the mecha operators of each team were not trained, but recruited and hired from outside. The advantage of this is that you can quickly get a driver, but the disadvantage is also obvious. That is, these mecha operators usually lack a sense of belonging and are not loyal enough. Just like taking Yang Tao as a student, Luo Yan did not take him in for fun, but planned to train his own trusted soldiers. The same is true for setting up a mecha operator training and learning program. He plans to train his own pilots who are loyal enough. Therefore, Guan Peng was found, and his advice was listened to. After all, Guan Peng retired from the Corps, and in this regard, he would have more ways than Luo Yan. Now that he heard that Guan Peng could find a mentor and buy a simulated cockpit, Luo Yan felt relieved and nodded. Then I'll have to trouble Mr. Guan. Guan Peng laughed and said, Mr. Chigi, you're too polite. However, I can help you find a mentor, but I can't guarantee whether I can convince him. In addition, it is definitely impossible to get the latest model of the simulated cockpit, but even the obsolete old model is not cheap, at least 8 or 9 million work points. Luo Yan said calmly, it doesn't matter, Mr. Guan, just do your best as a mentor and leave it to fate. Money is not a problem for the simulated cockpit. Guan Peng nodded, that's fine. Luo Yan said again, by the way, does Iron Horse plan to expand? If you have this idea, I have some money here, which can be lent to you in the form of investment, without interest. Guan Peng's eyes lit up when he heard this. Since Iron Horse lost a large number of manpower in the forbidden area, Guan Peng has thought about expansion. Only by expanding and increasing the number of troops can we take on some bigger and more rewarding tasks. However, after the death of the leader and a large number of members, the funds of Iron Horse were quite scarce. If it were not for the 500,000 yuan in hiring money provided by Luo Yan, Iron Horse could not even pay for the medical expenses of the wounded, not to mention the expansion. Now that he heard that Chigi was willing to invest, Guan Peng was naturally moved and said, then I would like to thank Mr. Chigi first. To be honest, I do have this idea, but I'm suffering from a lack of funds. Luo Yan said straightforwardly, tomorrow I will ask Wen Zhao to transfer 1 million yuan to your account as startup capital. Of course, I will ask Wen Zhao to make up an investment agreement later. Read it and sign it, if you think there is no problem. The reason for investing in Iron Horse is that this mercenary group is now employed by him and is considered one of his main combat forces. Luo Yan certainly hopes that they are as good as possible. Secondly, through them, he can absorb excellent mecha division seedlings for himself. The members of Iron Horse are all retired soldiers of the Corps, and he may be able to pick up 1 or 2 talents among them. After this matter was settled, Wen Zhao came in and whispered in Luo Yan's ear, what a coincidence, sir. At night, several impulsive young men fought on both sides of Gilao Street. One of them was sent to the Laoke clinic and died. The dead young man has no relatives or friends. I have asked someone to pretend to be his relatives or friends. I should be able to bring the body back later. Luo Yan said and instructed, prepare some things for me. Also, find Yang Tao. Later, Guan Peng left, and Yang Tao came. After several days of recuperation, the girl's complexion was indeed much better than before. At least her face had some color, and her slightly red eyes were also brighter. Luo Yan glanced at her and said, follow me. Yes, teacher. As they walked along the road, Luo Yan said directly, next, I will test your courage. If you can pass this test, we will be considered a true teacher-student relationship. Otherwise, I will send you away. Or you can stay in the tea house as a handyman. Yang Tao took a deep breath and realized that in Luo Yan's heart, she had not really become his student. She bit her lip and said, teacher, what is the test? Luo Yan did not answer. He came to a room where Wen Zhao had been waiting for a long time. Seeing Luo Yan, the fake Taoist nodded and bowed. Master, everything you want is ready. Luo Yan waved his hand, and Wen Zhao opened the door and retreated. Come in. Luo Yan, who entered the door first, gestured for Yang Tao to come in. The girl walked into the door and suddenly smelled a strong smell of blood, and her face turned slightly pale. Luo Yan closed the door and walked to the middle bed, where a corpse was placed, covered with a white cloth. The white cloth was stained with blood. Luo Yan lifted it up, revealing the body of a young man in his 20s. "Come here." Hearing Luo Yan's words, Yang Tao did not dare to disobey and walked forward. The sudden sight of the body, especially the hideous facial expression and wide open eyes of the body due to the pain it endured before death, made the girl pale. Luo Yan said calmly, "Killing is not an easy thing. Especially when you have to kill some unrelated targets with whom you have no grudges or enmity. Whether you can do it, and whether you can overcome this psychological barrier is particularly important. Since you want to learn the technique of killing from me, I can naturally teach you, but as I said before, I will not teach in vain. If you want to learn, you have to sell your life to me. This means that you have to kill people for me. And the people you kill may be people you don't know, or have no intersection with. At that time, could you do it?" Yang Tao saw what happened in his heart, but still gritted his teeth and said, "Teacher, I can. I have already killed someone." Luo Yan asked back, "Gao Fugi? That doesn't count. Your father died because of him. At that time, you were full of resentment and evil, so you naturally had the courage to kill. But a killer, a professional killer, cannot kill with emotion." As he spoke, Luo Yan pushed a cart over, on which were placed cold weapons such as knives, swords, and daggers. Luo Yan took 2 steps back and said, "Now, I want you to choose a weapon at random, and cut the neck of the corpse for me." Yang Tao was startled, then asked in a low voice, "Don't you have a gun?" Luo Yan shook his head. Then he said, "When performing a mission, you should not use a sword, when you can use a gun. But as a killer, the first thing you have to do is to get your hands stained with blood. Only when you have really stained your hands with human blood and only when you have faced the eyes of the dead can you be considered to have truly killed someone. A gun can't do that. This is my last chance for you. You have to think carefully about whether you really want to be a killer. Is what you want to do worth dirtying your hands, or even your soul? This is my first lesson for you." Chapter 369 New Job. Yang Tao's breathing was slightly rapid, and then she walked to the side of the cart, looked at the weapons on it, and reached out to the longest iron sword. When her little hand fell on the hilt, Yang Tao's eyes struggled, and finally her palm moved to the shortest dagger. The blade of this dagger was only 1 palm long. Yang Tao bit her lip lightly, picked up the dagger, and walked to the body. The corpse had a hideous expression, eyes wide open, and murderous aura. Yang Tao's face was pale, and she took 2 steps back, her chest rising and falling rapidly. After a while, she clenched the dagger and walked forward. She looked at the corpse, restrained the urge to escape from the house, and looked into the eyes of the corpse. The hand holding the dagger became paler and paler. Luo Yan did not urge her. No one could help her with this first level, and she could only rely on herself to cross it. In fact, Luo Yan had helped her reduce the difficulty. At least Yang Tao is now facing only a corpse. But at the beginning, he was facing a living person. The difference in psychological barriers between the two was not a little bit. Finally, Yang Tao seemed to have made up her mind. She shouted and swung the dagger vigorously, making a cut on the neck of the corpse. Suddenly, a stream of blood spurted out and landed on Yang Tao's face, clothes, and hands. She stepped back step by step, suddenly threw away the dagger, and covered her mouth. Then she vomited everything she had eaten today. Luo Yan just looked at her, and waited until she stopped vomiting, then opened the door, and asked someone to take Yang Tao down to clean up. Wen Zhao also came with a few people to clean up the house, and take the corpse away. Luo Yan asked the fake Taoist to call Lei Qi's 2 women. Wen Zhao didn't know what this gentleman wanted to do, and didn't dare to ask, so he nodded, and went to do it. After a while, Yang Tao, who had cleaned up and changed clothes, walked into a quiet room. Seeing that her teacher was talking to the 2 women, she was a little nervous and even thought of some adult things. At this time, she heard Luo Yan calling her, "Come here." Yang Tao walked over. Luo Yan stepped back 2 steps. "Tonight, I will teach you to recognize every acupoint in your body. First, the danshan. It is located 1.5 inches below the belly button. Akiu. Leiki had two women, one named Sukiyo and the other Suking. The Akio that Luo Yan called came forward with a smile, gently lifted Yang Tao's clothes, looked at the girl's flat belly, and then gently pressed the position pointed out by Luo Yan with her warm palm. Luo Yan followed. Remember this position. It is very important. It is related to what you will learn next. Next, it is Niwen. Luo Yan explained the acupoints one by one, and at the same time ordered Sukiyu and Suking to touch Yang Tao's whole body to help the girl remember these acupoints. The reason for such a lot of trouble is that Luo Yan has already selected a primary practice for her. That practice is different from viewing mountains and seas. From the first level of practice, it emphasizes the release of ki from the danshan and the integration of the whole body. Of course, before teaching the primary practice, Luo Yan had to teach Yang Tao to practice the basic practice building Yuanju. But now, let her remember the more than 300 acupoints on her body, so that when she starts to practice the elementary exercises, she will get twice the result with half the effort. Luo Yan explained in detail, and from time to time guided Sukiyu and the other girl to touch the exact acupoints. Sometimes when Sukiyu and the other girl couldn't find the location, Luo Yan would hold their hands and move them. During the whole process, he didn't touch Yang Tao at all. After repeating the explanation 3 times, Yang Tao barely remembered the location of these acupoints. Luo Yan then let Sukiyu and the other girl leave, and then taught Yang Tao Zhu and Ju, explained the tricks of practicing this method, and shared with the student the problems he encountered during practice, the solutions and some practice experience. In this way, an evening passed. Luo Yan stood up and said, "In the next few days, you will practice visualization in the morning, review the location of all the acupoints in the human body in the afternoon, and continue to practice visualization in the evening. I will come to see you in a few days." Yang Tao nodded. "Okay, teacher." A few days later, Luo Yan came back with a suitcase. He opened the suitcase and Yang Tao saw a few things in the suitcase. "This is the red poison antidote." Luo Yan first picked up a syringe and put it on the table. "After the injection, there will be various adverse reactions, but you will get better if you endure it, and you will not be infected with red poison again when you are active on the surface in the future. Unless you are unlucky and come into contact with the blood essence of some giant beasts, otherwise, you will not be infected with red poison again." He patted the row of 7 inhalation medicines in the box. "Tranquilizer, use 1 bottle every day. Inhale it while practicing, and your practice will be much smoother." Yang Tao's mouth opened slightly when she heard it. Whether it is the red poison antidote or the medicine that can speed up the progress of practice, these are things she has never heard of when she was on the surface. She knew that these things must be expensive, and she was even more grateful to Luo Yan in her heart. "Thank you, teacher." Luo Yan did not answer, but asked the girl to come over, pulled up her sleeve, wiped her arm with alcohol, and injected her with the antidote. Then he said, "If you feel uncomfortable, practice visualization, which will help you reduce the adverse reactions." Yang Tao nodded obediently and listened to the instructions. Next, Luo Yan ignored the student and went to a room. Wen Zhao, Guanpeng, and Wei Junai were already waiting in the room. Luo Yan took a seat and said straight to the point, "We have work to do. The target this time is a survivor camp located in an abandoned town. Unlike other survivor camps, they are small in scale, with few people and no mecha. Basically, it's the same as a surface base. The owner of the camp is Cheng Basin. Before the disaster, he was said to be a boxer. He participated in many international competitions and won championships. As for now, he has also practiced visualization and has reached the level of the 4th level of elementary." Wen Zhao chuckled. "That's also an ant, but on the surface, especially in the survivor camp, he is also considered a big shot." Luo Yan nodded slightly and continued, "He has several confidants who practice visualization, and their average combat power is the 2nd level of elementary. In addition, there are 50 to 70 ordinary soldiers with average equipment, but far better than other survivor camps." Wei Junai said in a deep voice, "What did this Cheng do?" Luo Yan said lightly, "He took something he shouldn't have taken. We will use courtesy before force." When Zhao, send a notice to Cheng, asking him to deliver the goods to the place we designate within 3 days. Otherwise, he will have to clean his neck and wait for us to come and kill him. Finally, Luo Yan said, this is also a test. If Cheng has the guts to refuse, it means he has someone behind him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.